Welcome to r/Am I the Jerk, where OP's parents are giving him a house and his fiance really wants her name on it. My parents are giving me an $800,000 house and my fiance is demanding half of it. Me, 30 male, and my fiance, 30 female, have been together for 3.5 years. We have a 1-year-old son and overall our relationship is lovely. There are ups and downs, but that's normal since a 1-year-old baby is a lot of work. She's on maternal leave. I'm about to receive an $800,000 house as a gift from my parents. We've been planning this for years. My fiance looks forward to settling everything in the house, like furniture, etc. We plan to both invest our savings into the house. The elephant in the room was brought up yesterday. We never really talked about how the ownership would be set up. My parents want me to be the sole owner of the house, and since it's a gift, it will not be included in potential divorce in my future because of my country's laws. My fiance says that she is willing to invest money in the house. She's on maternity leave, which hinders her career as well as finances, and we plan to have another baby, which means she won't be working full-time in the next 5 years. She argues that it's unfair that she doesn't get anything. She won't own anything, and if something happens in the future, she'll be left on the street. I understand her point, but on the other hand, she can't expect my parents to just give her half the house. I can argue the opposite way. What if she just leaves me and our son after she sells half of the house? This broke into a pretty serious argument, and I'm not sure what would be the fair thing to do. Frankly, I hope your fiance sees through all this BS and leaves you instead of having another kid. It's definitely suspicious your parents are only giving you the house in your name only. Why is that? It's pretty clear your parents don't like her for whatever reason, and it seems like you don't either if you're expecting her to sacrifice years of her life to just having and raising kids while not having a stable source of income, and not give her any kind of reassurance that she won't be left with nothing. A shared investment is useless because it's also yours. She needs something for just her. On top of that, being a stay-at-home mom means you get to save a lot on daycare fees too, on not just one, but 2 kids for 5 years if she really decides to go ahead and stay with you. This is why less and less women are choosing to have kids and more are choosing to stay single than deal with selfish jerks. This is Reddit. If you were a woman, they would laud your family's efforts to provide a free home and a nest egg to you. Since you are a man, you're the jerk for the same thing. See a lawyer, get a prenup. Alternatively, your parents could place the house in a trust with you as beneficiary with no legal ownership except as specified in the trust. Again, a good lawyer can set all of that up for you and your parents. Good luck. Nope, don't give in or put her name on that house no matter what. Your parents worked very hard on purchasing that house for you and not just to give half of it to your fiance. Don't marry her yet. Parents worked hard? They're more than likely boomers who got lucky and made bank on real estate because they bought property for nothing and now it's worth 100 times that. Boomers have never worked hard. They've been babied and tricked younger generations into hustle culture to do all of the work while they sit back and buy pretty things, while 90% of them in those $100,000 cars shouldn't even be driving. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his fiance? Please let us know. Customer came in demanding I break the rules for her. I'm an overnight cashier at a gas station. It's a pretty chill job most nights. There are a few bad apples as always, but nothing too bad. Every now and then I'll get an entitled customer demanding I sell them beer without an ID. One lady though, she really got under my skin. This happened a while back. She comes in around 11:30, well past the time that we shut down lottery. We turn off the machine at 10 as per store regulations. The machine undergoes a ton of updates nightly and it takes 6 to 7 hours. I notice she has one of those ball draw style lotto cards in her hand. So I call out and explain that our machine is off for the night and I can't sell her tickets. She scoffs loudly and accuses me of lying, saying I don't want to do my job. I reiterate that the machine is undergoing maintenance and she'll have to return at 5 a.m. She throws the ticket on the ground and stomps over to the beer aisle. Already annoyed, I think to myself, next time, I'll make sure my coworker deals with her. I don't want this drama. She comes back to the counter, beer cans in tow, and slams them down. I grab one to scan and ask for her ID. Once again, she scoffs and asks if it's really necessary, claiming she has wrinkles older than me. I explain that it's store policy and state law to check IDs for alcohol purchases. We go back and forth for 5 minutes. It finally ends when I tell her that she can either give me her ID so I can do my job, or she can leave beerless and lotto-less. She reluctantly passes me her ID, her face bright red, and then starts going off. She says I need to lose my job and claims my manager, whom she called by name, would be so upset to hear how I'm treating a regular. I calmly write my name and my manager's free time for the next day, telling her she's welcome to come in and complain. It'll go absolutely great for her. She snatches the paper and then starts asking for cigarettes. I tell her I'm not selling her anything else, as she has repeatedly made me uncomfortable and I have the right to refuse service to anyone for any reason. She leaves, screaming that she's going to come back and beat me up. I leave a long text for my managers in the group chat explaining what happened and giving a description of her. A couple of hours later, some of my regulars come in for their nightly coffees, 2 local sheriffs. I give them the rundown of what transpired, and one promises to swing by a few times over the next few nights to make sure she's not causing more trouble. Here's where I got petty. She had parked in front of the store, giving me a perfect good view of her license plate. I took note and waited. 2 nights later, she shows up and parks by the dumpster. She's standing on the sidewalk for 2 hours, waiting for me to come outside. About an hour in, I call the tow service our store uses, saying there's a broken down car in our lot in prime parking. This is per the rules. The cops come through for coffee, as they always do, and ask me if she's the customer who's been harassing me. I confirm that it's her. They go out to talk to her, and just as they do, the tow truck pulls in. She walks away from the cops, confused and upset, trying to talk to the driver. I didn't hear much of the encounter, but I watched as she got arrested, put in the back of the patrol car, and they waited for the tow truck to haul off her car before leaving. I have no idea what happened to her after that, but she hasn't come back, and I didn't get in trouble with management. Am I the jerk for telling my wife she's wrong and that my mom is right? I, 35 male, have been married to my wife, who's 32, for 5 years, and we've been struggling financially for the past few months. I lost my job about 3 months ago, and while I found part-time work, it doesn't pay nearly as much as before. We've had to cut back on a lot of things, but it feels like no matter what we do, we're still living paycheck to paycheck and even pulling from savings. Recently, my mom, who's 65, came over to visit, and she noticed how stressed I was about the money situation. She offered some advice on how we could save money, things like cutting down on takeout, meal prepping to avoid buying groceries multiple times a week, and switching to cheaper brands. My mom has always been frugal, especially when she was raising me and my siblings on a tight budget. I thought it made sense, especially since we're trying to save wherever we can. I asked if she was willing to go through our spending and show where we could cut down. My wife agreed to this. She made a whole spreadsheet about our spending, and we are spending way too much on fun stuff. We don't need Starbucks every day and so on. It also became apparent that most of the fun spending was my wife's. To be honest, my wife didn't take the breakdown well and started arguing with my mom that her spreadsheet was wrong. She said that my mom's way of doing things is outdated and doesn't work for us. She doesn't want to give up buying organic produce, and she likes having variety in what we eat each week. I tried to explain that we need to make some sacrifices if we want to get out of this financial hole, but she kept insisting that things weren't as bad as I was making them out to be and that we just needed to ride it out. My mom left at this point and we were still arguing, and she told me she can't just give up on her takeout. She also went on about my mom being wrong. That's when I lost my patience and said, "You're wrong. My mom is right. She managed to raise 3 kids on 1 income, and we can't even cut back on groceries for a few months." My wife got really upset, saying I'm being a huge jerk for siding with my mom and that my mom is outdated. She's barely spoken to me since, and now I'm wondering if I went too far. But the way I see it, we need to be realistic about our situation, and my mom's advice could actually help us get back on track. Not the jerk. Your wife agreed to go through your budget with your mom. Your mom took the time and effort to review things, and then it sounds like your wife was very rude and dismissive. As far as I know, math hasn't changed that much in the last 30 years or so it's not clear how your mom's views are outdated. Not the jerk. And your wife needs to learn the difference between a need and a want. She doesn't want to give up her luxuries, so evidently Starbucks is more important than financial security. My husband and I are very frugal. I do not upgrade my phone until I have to. We only eat out at dinner once a week. We pack our lunches. We don't have designer expensive clothes. I shop sales for everything. I plan my menu for the week around the sale ad. My husband and I make over $200,000 a year, and he wears rural king jeans that cost $12.99 because we don't need to impress anyone. I would rather have $3,000 in a $30 purse than a $3,000 purse with $30 in it. As a result, we can pay cash for items like cars, etc. We're set up well for retirement. It's called priorities. Paying $10 for a coffee during the week adds up to $50. That's $2,600 a year. That coffee tastes good, but when you can't pay your bills or have no money for emergencies or retirement, what are you going to do? HOA illegally cut our internet wire. For context, I live in a house in a gated community with many homes close to each other. Recently, the Spectrum wire running from the outside to the box was cut. I'm not sure if the person knew it was an internet wire, but they cut it. Apparently, it was an eyesore because it was slightly exposed near the box, which makes no sense since there are other exposed wires there, so it's been that way for years. We called Spectrum and they sent a technician to check it out. Here's the kicker. Not only did someone cut the long, expensive wire, but they also stole it. The Spectrum technician was shocked, saying, "What the heck? They can't do that. They can't destroy our property." He also mentioned that he could have reconnected it even if it was cut, but since it was stolen, we have to wait. It's not even our cable, it's Spectrum's. Now we have to wait until Monday for a crew to come out and install a new wire, running it from our house to the box. Spectrum is going to charge the HOA for the bill. The whole situation makes no sense to me. We had no idea they were going to do this, no notifications or anything. They just came and did it. I was at work and we only found out about it because my dad heard someone on the roof and discovered the wire had been cut. The person claimed to be from the HOA. Isn't that illegal? Beyond destroying and stealing Spectrum's property, they can't come onto our property without notifying us, let alone destroy something. If I had been home, I would have confronted them immediately. Spectrum is trying to make up for the inconvenience by upgrading our internet speeds and giving us a stronger cable when they install the new one on Monday. But my real issue is with the HOA. What the heck? Update 2 days later. It turns out the HOA did admit to cutting it, not surprising. However, they claimed there was a miscommunication. The person who cut it was only supposed to inspect it and come up with a solution to make it less of an eyesore. Somehow things got mixed up, so they say. After some angry phone calls, they quickly apologized when I brought up the FCC and the possibility of a police report. They agreed to cover any of the fees from Spectrum. We got on a three-way call with Spectrum and the HOA greenlit Spectrum to make the necessary repairs and to bill them directly. I also pointed out that this didn't make me whole, considering I had been without internet for 4 days. I asked how they planned to make up for their mistake, and they offered to waive 2 months of HOA fees as an apology. I accepted, as I just wanted my internet back and no more problems. Spectrum also agreed to prorate my bill for the days I was without service and is upgrading my internet speeds as a gesture of goodwill for being a loyal customer. So I'd say it worked out great in the end. This was my first real issue with the HOA, and I'm sure they realized they messed up because they put me on hold for 10 minutes and then came back with an apology. It's dumb because all the HOA had to do was talk to me about it and I would have called Spectrum myself. Even Spectrum said the issue was easy to fix. All they had to do was move it to make it less noticeable and that would have been the end of it. But instead, it turned into this whole situation. Hopefully this is the end of it and we can all move on. I can't say if this HOA is terrible or not since this is the first time they've ever messed with something in my house, but thanks to everyone who gave me advice and support. Am I the jerk for refusing to change my baby's name after I named her after my dad's affair partner? I, 26 female, just gave birth to my daughter Annabelle. I didn't announce the name beforehand because, in the past, one of my family members stole a baby name, which caused a lot of drama. My mom wanted to know, but I was adamant about keeping it a secret. My mom and dad were in the room when I gave birth, and when it was time to sign the birth certificate, my mom asked for the name. I told her it was Annabelle. Her face went pale, and my dad didn't look too happy, though he said he loved the name. My mom left a few minutes later, claiming she didn't feel well. She said she'd come over in a few days to help with the baby. Now that I'm home with the baby, my mom hasn't been talking to me much. We used to talk every day, so I was confused by this sudden behavior. My sister, Emily, still lives with my mom, so I called her over to talk. When she got to my house, she explained that she overheard our parents arguing. Apparently, about 10 years ago, my dad had an affair with a coworker named Annabelle. My mom hasn't been talking to him, and he's been trying to get her to engage. I guess Dad realized Emily had come over and decided to come over himself. He asked if there was any way I could change Annabelle's name. I asked him why, to see if he'd tell me the truth, and he did. He admitted to the affair. He begged my mom not to leave him back then, and she stayed, but just hearing that name had always put her in a bad headspace. I told him I couldn't change the name because Annabelle was the name of my husband's grandmother who helped raise him. My dad begged and pleaded for me to change it, saying my mom was in the middle of packing her bags and heading to her sister's house. I told him I wouldn't change her name as it means so much to me and my husband. He began raising his voice, and my sister immediately yelled back, telling him to get out. She told him not to stress me out over a mess that he created. He left immediately. I'm not changing my baby's name, but I feel like this is tearing my family apart. What should I do? Edit. Annabelle isn't her real name. Her real name only has 3 letters, so a nickname based on it wouldn't be possible. A lot of you suggested changing her first name to her middle name, but her middle name is my mom's name, so I don't want to change that. Not the jerk, but your daughter is going to deal with most of this backlash, so brace yourselves for that. Call your mom. Tell her you're sorry and you had zero idea about any of this. Tell her if she wants, she can call your daughter by her first and middle name. That might give her some separation, or make a nickname. Tell your mom everything you know about Grandma Annabelle. She liked to knit. She had an infectious laugh. Her eyes were blue. She did ballet. She needs mental separation from her husband's fling. As far as the affair, Dad needs to figure that out. This is between them, and if your baby uncovered feelings, then that's their problem, not yours. They need therapy or a split. Not the jerk. Am I the jerk for throwing out my kids' food? When I was a kid, my mother had no concept of what healthy food was. If it said diet on the box, she thought it was fine. She would serve me cereal for breakfast, and dinner was often processed, ready-to-eat junk or McDonald's. After-school snacks were cookies and Little Debbie snacks. My mom is obese, and I weighed almost 300 pounds when I graduated high school. It was only after I moved out that I realized how unhealthy I was. It took me years to lose that weight and establish good eating habits. My wife has always had healthy habits and was brought up by a family that didn't trust processed foods. My family and I now follow a whole food diet. Recently, my mom had a heart attack and now weighs almost 400 pounds. This is her 3rd heart attack and she couldn't make rent, so she's living with me while she recovers. She has seen a nutritionist multiple times for her weight, but she acts like she's too dumb to understand what they're saying or pretends that no one really eats that way. She claims that doctors and nurses are bullying her. She's been ordering junk food and takeout from apps like Instacart and Uber Eats. Worse, she's been feeding my kids the same junk food even after I told her to stop. My Ring camera went off and I saw my youngest getting my mom's latest McDonald's order. She had gotten both of my kids Happy Meals. This was the 3rd time she had done it this week. I took the Happy Meals and threw them in the trash, pouring cleaner on top. I told my mom, if you want to eat this stuff, that's fine, but don't try to feed my kids this trash like you fed me. Things escalated when my mom started crying, saying she didn't know any better and that one Happy Meal wouldn't hurt them. I reminded her that this was the 3rd time this week. I told her that if she fed my kids this junk food again, she would find herself in a nursing home. She cried and insisted I was being mean, claiming that doctors bully her and that she just wants to live her life. I told her she wasn't living her best life. She was putting her health at risk. My mom called me a bully and told my kids that I was a bully too, urging them not to act like me at school. I told her I'd had enough and that I would start looking at nursing homes later that week. I refused to let her bring this lifestyle into my home and around my kids. Not the jerk. Your house, your kids, your rules. What was your kids' reaction to all of this? In an age-appropriate way, I'd be honest with them and explain why that food isn't healthy food and that yes, maybe it can be a sometimes food, but if you eat sometimes food too much, you can get sick like grandma. I feel bad for how intentionally ignorant your mom is being and risking her relationship with her grandkids for McDonald's. It sounds like she has some mental disorder that's causing her to blame literally everyone and everything else for her problems and never take responsibility. I'd keep on the track of getting her in a home because I wouldn't want that attitude rubbing off on my kids. Am I the jerk for telling my father that it was his fault he missed my son's first birthday party? My son turned 1 this past weekend. On Sunday, my husband and I threw a birthday party for him at a local kids venue. We confirmed the date with both the venue and our guests a few months ago. One of those guests was my father. When I informed him of the date, he told me he would come. A few days before the party, he asked if there was any way for me to reschedule it. I said no, as we had already confirmed everything with the venue. My father then told me he'd be late because there was an event at his girlfriend's church on the same day, and she wanted him to attend. I should mention that my immediate family, including my father, is technically Catholic, but none of us practice. However, my father's girlfriend is very religious. I'm talking Jesus as her phone wallpaper religious. Since they started dating a little over a year ago, my father has been attending church with her on a semi-regular basis. He has explicitly told me he doesn't like it, but he does it to make her happy. I told my father I was fine with him being late as long as he came to the party at some point. He said he'd show up as soon as the church event was done. A few hours before the party ended, my father texted me that the event was still going, and he thought it would be in poor taste to leave early, so he probably wouldn't be able to come. I didn't hear from him again that day. On Monday, my father called to explain that the event lasted longer than he expected. He didn't apologize, but asked if I was angry at him. I said yes. He said he had no way of knowing the event would last that long, but that's not what I'm upset about. I told him he chose to prioritize an event he didn't even want to attend over his grandson's first birthday, made several other choices that led him to completely miss it, and didn't inform me until the last minute. All of those decisions were his, so the fact that he ultimately didn't come to the party was his fault. My father still refuses to apologize and insists that I have no right to be angry over something he had no control over. I'm starting to feel conflicted. My husband is on my side, but my sister told me I'm being dramatic. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. He made his choice, asked if you were upset, was told yes, you were, to which he said, "Well, actually, I was expecting you to placate my feelings about missing the party and prioritizing my girlfriend over my grandson." Don't. You seriously do not need to soothe his feelings. Say to him clearly once more, "I'm upset you chose to miss the party. Why you missed it is beside the point. It's not like you were in the ER with a ruptured spleen after a massive car wreck. You were with your girlfriend, period. He doesn't get a free pass on your feelings just because he values his own comfort over yours." Not the jerk. Your father is an adult, and he made a choice to attend a different event. He asked if you were upset, and you answered him honestly. He chose his girlfriend over his grandchild. It's understandable to be disappointed in him and upset that he made the choice that he made. It's very possible he'll do this again in the future. I do think hanging on to your anger only eats away at you, though. Doesn't seem to be bothering him all that much. Make peace with the fact that he's going to choose the girlfriend. Adulting sucks sometimes. Not the jerk, but I'm on your sister's side regarding you being a bit dramatic. Your kid is 1. He won't remember this. The party was more for you and your husband. Your son will never know his grandfather wasn't there unless you tell him. Now, yes, he should have kept his promise, making him the jerk, but I don't know. It's a 1-year-old birthday party, not a high school graduation. You're the jerk. Get over yourself. It's the birthday of a 1-year-old that won't remember a thing. Yes, it would have been nice for your father to be there, but what are you going to do now? Stay mad at him forever? No, so just let it go. You told him it upset you. All you can do is move on. No, we're not here to eat. We're producing content right now. I work in a really cute restaurant that's popular with the blogger crowd. Our decor is pretty, our food is pretty, and our cocktails are pretty. The restaurant as a whole is quite Instagrammable. Unfortunately, we occasionally get influencers who think being present on Instagram, TikTok, etc. makes them the main character of the world, who thinks the rotation of the earth hinges on them, continuing to upload pictures of themselves in cute clothes. An event last month that I'm still angry about. A group of 5 girls came into our restaurant, and for some reason, they decide that it's the perfect place to have a photo shoot and a catwalk. Literally, we have girls who start strutting up and down the aisles between tables and filming each other. We had guest complaints because most people do not feel comfortable being filmed at their tables by random women in street clothes, so the manager comes out to check in with the ladies. At this point, they've decided to seat themselves at a table, after ignoring the host, of course, and our manager asks if they're being attended to by a server yet. One of the girls has the gall to say, "We're not here to eat. We're here producing content for our channels." So, of course, the manager tells them they'll need to leave, as our tables are reserved for guests only. They decide to stay and keep photographing each other. Our host decides to interfere before our manager comes back and tells the girls that they do need to leave when asked, or our manager might call security to have them escorted out, which is a pretty sensible thing to me, right? Well, if you're an entitled influencer, apparently it's the worst thing in the world. Almost immediately after leaving, the girl actually uploads a whole testimony to Instagram, crying and saying that she and her girls discovered a cute restaurant, but the manager decided to kick them out for taking photos and stealing content, and that our manager called security on them without warning, which shows that our manager was dangerous, and that our manager needs a culture class after putting them in danger. And on top of that, it's Black History Month. The gall and entitlement gets me. You can't come into a restaurant, start filming other people without their permission, sit at a table without buying anything, and then refuse to leave when asked. You're making other people uncomfortable, inconveniencing guests who had a reservation, and taking money out of the pocket of the server whose table you're sitting at. Shaking my head. Doesn't surprise me a bit. The number of people during tourist season who will try to bring in outside food to our air-conditioned dining room, pizza shop, no server or host, is mind-boggling. And they always act so surprised when we kick them out. I'm pretty sure one of the times our bathroom got dookie crayoned was because we had asked people with outside food to leave. Dealership said sue, so I did. This all started December of last year and just finished last week. So I bought a car from one of those buy here and pay here places. I love the car. It's a Mazda 5 from 2014, basically the smallest minivan I've ever seen. Well, on Christmas, we drove to some family for dinner and celebration. When we went to leave, the car wouldn't start. We checked everything and found out the horn wasn't even connected. Any fuse that wasn't absolutely needed was simply missing, and the tires were the original tires. Beyond that, we hooked up to the computer and it read several errors, but the one getting in the way was the immobilizer. I had never known the van had one. I called AAA and set up towing, but because we were in the middle of nowhere, AAA couldn't get a tow truck to us under our membership, free. So we had to call a tow truck and then submit the bill to AAA after the fact. So family let us borrow their car and the van was towed to a shop. A few days later, and the shop calls and tells us what's wrong. I live in Texas, a single-party consent state, and I record all of my calls thanks to an app on my phone. The long list of car issues isn't important. The point of this van is a basic work van. The only issue they found stopping it from running is the immobilizer inactive, and they can't touch it without talking to the dealer. I three-way called the dealership and the shop, and we talked for 17.34 minutes during this call, and the dealership acknowledged we were not behind and everything should be working unless it malfunctioned. The dealership also gave permission for the shop to bypass it and we would be reimbursed the towing and repairs. All the shop needed to do to get the van running was bypass the immobilizer, and a couple days later we picked up the van and paid the bill. Both bills came to just under $300 and we started calling the dealership. The first few conversations go well and the phone rep seemed interested in helping, but mostly I end up getting tossed around from department to department and then disconnected. That went on for some time, and I of course took to Reddit to find out options. As almost always happens, Reddit users know some crazy facts and how to get stuff done. So I followed their advice and kept calling, eventually getting to a supervisor, and the first supervisor said he'd get it taken care of, and we ended the call. 2 more days go by and nothing is heard. So I call back, get tossed around, and then get another manager who says, "We are not responsible for mechanical issues and hang-ups." I call back, now quite annoyed, and eventually get back to the same manager. I explain I have all the information and call recordings, including the repair shop 3-way call. He cuts me off and says, "What? Are you going to take us to court over $296.47? I don't think so, but go ahead and sue. We will win, and if that small amount is worth suing to you, you probably don't have the resources to actually sue." This of course made me quite upset, so off to a justice of the peace and explained what's happened. They give us a small claims form and explain the process. We can fill it out and pay for a constable to serve the dealership, or fill out the paper and take it to the dealership unfiled and explain everything to a manager in person. We chose the cheaper route because the manager on the phone was right. We didn't have the money to have it served, only filed. So we transcribed the phone calls, found out how to fill out the paper. The hardest part was finding the agent. We didn't know what that meant, but we again turned to Reddit and learned. We gathered the bills and all the paperwork and made our way to the dealership's payment center. I wait in line and see the name of the manager is the same as the manager on the phone that told me to sue. I wait in line, and when it's my turn, I ask to talk to John, and he comes over and sits across from me. After making introductions, and I confirm it's the same guy, I start to explain the situation again. As I'm explaining, I see when he recalls talking to me on the phone. He starts to dismiss me, and I explain that he asked me to sue, and I'm here with all my evidence and the unfixed suit, giving him one final chance. He starts to look over the papers and asked if I still had the recordings. I said yes, I could email him a copy. We sit and talk for about an hour as he reads. Then I said with a slight aggravated tone, if something isn't done today, not only am I going to head right back to the courthouse and file, as well as tack on as much for emotional distress and whatever else the clerk hinted at. The clerk was very open-mouthed with ideas, as well as send a copy of everything to every email on the corporate website. At this, our conversation drew the attention of a woman in a power suit who rushes over for a recap. I find out she's John's boss's boss's boss, and she's none too happy about how far things have gone. She assured me that all would be made right and gave me her cell number and email. I gave her the papers and left. The next Monday at 8 a.m., I got a call asking if credit being applied to the account would be acceptable. I say yes, and she explains they will credit $500 to the account as payments. The payments are only $155 every 2 weeks. I agree, and we talk for a few minutes. When I ask why it took this much just to get things done, she laughed and said, "It shouldn't have, and certain people are no longer employed at this company." Well, today was Wednesday and the day of the payment, but when I went to make the payment, it was already done. Thank you, Power Suit Lady. My fiance deleted my work project to get back at me for not going with him to his friend's birthday party. My fiance's best friend's birthday party was yesterday. My fiance wanted me to go with him, but I apologized and said I couldn't because I had to finish a work project in the evening and barely had time. He said it was unacceptable since the party was held at a prestigious restaurant and all his friends were going to bring their partners. He insisted I go with him, but I told him if I don't complete this project soon, I will lose a potential promotion next month and someone else will take my place. He just looked at me and said, "I just hope it'll be worth it," then walked out. I called him, but he hung up. I got done with my project and went to go take a shower. I got out and found him in the living room, refusing to speak to me after I asked about the party. I went upstairs to finalize my project, but found out that my entire work laptop had been reset. Everything got wiped, including my project. My heart sank. I asked my fiance if he was behind this, and he just looked at me and said that now we are even after I refused to come with him to the party and embarrassed him by forcing him to go alone and get weird looks and questions from everyone. I started yelling at him and called him insecure to care about his public image and looks and getting even just because I had to work. He said I contributed to this outcome and should have just gone with him. Now I had to start all over again. We started exchanging words and he told me to stop saying he's insecure and petty. He checked into a hotel and has been staying there constantly texting about how hurt he was that he had to hear me call him insecure and refusing to have any consideration for him. He said that I did make him look bad when I refused to come with him, and he was hurt by that. Our ongoing argument is that I keep saying that just because we're a couple, then I have to attend every event with him, while he keeps saying that it's classless and socially unacceptable when I let him attend alone unless I'm sick or traveling. You spelled ex-fiance incorrectly. You're not the jerk. OP, you need to understand that undermining your career isn't just a normal insult or overstep. It is a distinct category because it is dangerous. If his controlling behavior gets worse, which it likely will, you will need money, your own healthcare, the ability to get out and live independently. You need your job to be safe. If he wants to be controlling, domineering, disrespectful, and do it in a way that undermines your financial independence and ability to leave him, you have to take that seriously. Not the jerk. You need to take a really good hard look at this relationship. What he did is not all right. What he did has the potential to affect your financial stability. What he did was horrible, and I hope you see that. I really hope you consider getting out of this relationship, because if this is what he does now, when you're in the honeymoon phase, what is he going to be like when you're married? Please listen to us older, experienced women when we tell you that this is going down a very bad path for you. He's also super insecure and childish if he can't go to a party alone and say his fiance has to work without being embarrassed. He's going to be mortified when he has to say he no longer has a fiance at the next party he attends alone. I don't say this often, but girl, run. Like yesterday. I'm afraid this man wouldn't have been physically safe in my presence had he done this to me. You don't mess with someone's career like this. On the other hand, he's clearly a petulant child and is clearly not old enough to be dating anybody. Entitled mom demands free waffles, later sends her kids. This happened a few years ago. There was this one sunny Sunday, and I was in a particularly good mood. I was walking around my new neighborhood. All the houses were built at the same time, and about 50 families moved in and got settled in the last few months back then. People were still getting to know each other. I noticed a bunch of Girl Scouts going door to door with some homemade waffles. As I walked past, they approached me and tried to get me to buy some waffles. Told them to follow me home as I didn't bring money on my walk. While walking, we spoke a little, and it turned out their sale had been underwhelming. I decided to buy all of their waffles. I was handed easily over 100 waffles. If I remember correctly, I spent about 60 to 70 euros. Happy faces ran off. I figured I'd open up my garage, pop up a small plastic table I keep in the garden shed, and plug in my waffle iron to heat up the waffles. Filled bowls with all kinds of sugar and placed a few syrups next to it. Next, I invited all the new neighbors over to my driveway for a free waffle by texting our Facebook group. Sure enough, a couple of families were keen and a small crowd gathered. It was all fun and games. People got to know each other better as I warmed up the waffles, and I had fun with topping them. Made monstrosities with Nutella, ice cream, sprinkles, maple syrup, jam, all in one measly waffle. That kid still loves me. His mother, not so much. But this story isn't about her, and she's a sweetheart, really. After some time, a frowning lady who, for some reason, appeared to be in quite the hurry, made her way through my neighbors and approached me. I hadn't seen her before. She asked what all this was and why it was happening. Told her the entire story and that it was based on a whim. I don't know how to describe her that would do her character justice, but she was very in your face, way too intense. "So they're free?" she asked. Well, yeah. I told her again, I meant to bring neighbors together, but that I'd happily provide her with a gloriously topped waffle too. She went, nah, none of that, and said she'd have a bag. She wanted no less than 20 waffles. Now, I'm usually not one for confrontation, and I was already deciding to comply. But then I realized that I owed her nothing, and backed up by the frowns of my neighbors, I told the lady that this definitely was not what I had in mind when I bought those waffles. I told her I was okay with preparing her one or two and with sticking around for a talk, but I wasn't just going to hand them out in large numbers to complete strangers. She then raised her volume and, exaggeratedly offended, she yelled at me what my deal was and why she was the only one denied waffles. Neighbors stepped in. I said that everything here had good intentions and even apologized for taking her chance to buy waffles from the scouts. I offered her to buy some off me if she wanted them that bad, as I still had plenty, but she was adamant on getting them for free. "No way, everyone got theirs for free. I won't be the only one paying." Something like that. Multiple attempts were made to reason with her and to make her see the intention of our event, alas, to no avail. Neighbors isolated her, and after some irrelevant blabbering from her to a poor guy who hadn't even said a word, she stormed off. It kind of ruined my mood, but I decided to let it pass. Other families were still coming in, and the situation quickly became a bonding moment. Most were surprised hearing about it. Some already knew about her and were less surprised. About 45 minutes to an hour later, two unknown, very friendly kids showed up and ate a waffle. Most people had left by then, and I was just having drinks with some of the guys who stuck around. I had a few waffles left, and the kids asked if they could bring some home. Well, yeah, why not? The event had ended, they were friendly, and they didn't ask for many, so I complied. Happy faces ran off with a few waffles towards a lady in the distance. Yup, it was entitled Mom. And yup, those were her kids. She gave me a mean gesture in front of them, yelled something which I didn't understand, and they walked off in the distance. We had to process that for a while. Meanwhile, Entitled Mom is quite infamous around our neighborhood. She lives a few streets farther. She's employed as a caregiver in a retirement home. Poor people. And she's an absolute terror. She dumps her trash in other people's bins so she doesn't have to pay for the new pay-per-kilo system. She blocks driveways. On several cases, reported as a package thief. Calls cops for anything. Has been seen to mistreat neighborhood cats. The list goes on. Her kids are super sweet though, which is remarkable. I luckily haven't seen much of her since the waffle incident, but I thought the story was fitting quite well here. You might say I'm a hypocrite for denying her a free bag and then later giving it to the kids, but there are some key differences. 1, they were kids. 2, they were friendly. 3, they asked, didn't demand. 4, the event was nearing its end. 5, they didn't ask for a ridiculous amount. Reimbursement bounced for going over by a few cents? Cool, I'll spend 20 times that. Worked as a freelancer in a job that almost always required travel. The per diem amount allotted for meals was actually pretty generous, which is needed when traveling. Airports, hotel, room service, and touristy areas, if you happen to be stuck there with no other options, are pricey. But it was not a true payday amount in the sense that you could spend however you wanted per day. You got a certain amount for breakfast, for lunch, and for dinner, but could transfer the amount between them only if you were buying all 3 meals in a day. Understandable, since you shouldn't get to spend a full day's amount on one meal if you didn't fly out for the job until late. 1 meal was easy, the amount allotted for that meal. 3 was easy, can transfer between the 3 to use the full day amount. But you have to literally have 3 receipts to prove it. If you knew you were going to be on site and miss lunch, for example, we found you had to go buy a bag of chips or a banana or something for as little money as you could and claim it to be a meal to unlock the rest of the meal amount to use later. 2 meals is where it got hairy. You could only use the amount for that meal and not transfer anything between them since you didn't use all 3 meals, hence needing to buy something random above if you were truly there all day. Was at the airport at 5 a.m. and went to the original place, a bar/restaurant. Got an omelet and a drink or something, and not wanting to stiff the server, in the US, tipped appropriately for that region and went about 50 cents over on breakfast. At my next layover, and since more places were open, got cheap fast food and went $10 under on lunch. When I submitted for reimbursements, it was bounced for going 50 cents over policy for breakfast. When I pointed out I went $10 under for lunch, they said that was the policy and to remove 50 cents from the expense report in order for it to be paid. In a policy meant to save the company money, I was penalized for saving them $10 because I went over 50 cents. Fine, I thought, take your 50 cents. From then on, I tried to spend every last dollar of the per diem amount, even if I wasn't hungry. I'd hoard snacks and things from the airport and take them home to eat later. I'd rather start to spend a few dollars of my own money beyond the per diem to make sure I used every last cent of theirs. These companies should really hire some YouTube speedrunners to crash test their policies. The things they accidentally incentivize are insane. What's really sad is the person who initially rejected the 50 cents probably saw this new behavior and thought, oh good, now he's following the rules. Sometimes the enforcers even know the policy is dumb, tried but failed to fix it, and are silently cheering you on for manipulating it. As someone in this position, I agree, though it amazes me how many people don't catch on when I explain multiple times on how they can maximize their personal benefits while being in compliance with policies. I'll even mention sometimes things have to fail in order for a change to be made, and it's not their problem or fault if they are in compliance with policy and the company gets done over for enforcing its own policies. I don't make the rules, but have to enforce them. Listen to what you're being told and you will benefit. Yet, people will often just complain and not do anything. The company knows most people will fall in line and follow the common practice of what they actually want instead of the actual policies set in place. If you don't like it, there's the door. This is my own personal story that took place in Belgium around 2015 to 2016. Context. In my mid-20s, I worked in accounting with 4 other mid-20s guys. We were a solid, well-oiled machine that ran flawlessly, and yet we had way too much work and needed an extra person. We had taken over in 1 year from the previous team, who seemingly quit for no reason. At the end of the second quarter, we crushed through the mountain of work with a collective 4 weeks of overtime between us. Boss was happy and allowed us to finally go on vacation. More like he knew we had accumulated too many recovery days and gave us the bonus we were promised if we reached the goal. We've been unhappy with this situation for some time and have been complaining about it. Clearly, there's enough work to justify hiring an extra person, so we go tell the boss. As soon as we explain why we're asking for an extra person, he goes ballistic. How dare we employees who are terrible at our jobs dare ask for an extra hand when all we do is mess around for the entire day and we're costing him money. In his screaming, he points to the door and says, "I'm not holding you hostage. If you're unhappy, I suggest you walk out." We're stunned. What the heck did he just say? We came in to ask for help, and he's telling us to buzz off? We ask him to explain what he means. He literally says, "I don't need you. I don't need any of you. Quit if you don't like it." I wish I could say we did, but we were stunned because we thought since we've crushed our workload, we would be in his good graces. So we shut up and let him continue his tirade. Come January, crunch time is coming. Boss gathers the entire company in a meeting room and goes on to explain how we're horrible workers and can't do anything properly and we're costing him money. He then goes on to say the company made 1,000% profit compared to last year. If we're so bad at our jobs, how come we multiplied profits? He goes on to say that from now on, no more bonuses because we're crap workers and we're expected to stay in the offices until our work is done, no matter how long that may be. No exceptions. Whoever doesn't comply will be fired. He reminds us that he can replace us at any moment and that we need to prove we deserve our jobs. The thing is, I knew I was the best employee there. Not just the best accountant, but the best, innovative, most charismatic, most resourceful, and on top of that, the rest of the team and a lot of people from other departments kind of relied on my upbeat, seemingly lighthearted, jokerish attitude. And so, tired of his crap and extremely scared of the mountain of incoming work, I get up and just say, I quit. Boss doesn't understand what I mean and continues his meeting while I go to clear my desk. I've cleared my desk by the time he's finished the meeting, and while I'm walking out past him, he understands what I'm doing. He immediately starts yelling that I'm abandoning my post and that it's unprofessional and there will be consequences. I'm calm because I had already made up my mind. We're in front of everyone, including the rest of my team. I simply tell him, Boss, we all heard you say that I'm free to leave at any point because you don't need me. Isn't that right, guys? No one answers, of course, because they're all, boss included, stunned that the nice guy, who's always polite and keeps his head down, is being assertive. Before boss gets a chance to snap out of it, I tell him that he mistook my tact and diplomacy for acceptance and that I'm only doing what he said. Maybe he should choose his words carefully next time. The rest of the team quit within 3 months. They knew where crap was going, and they spent their time at work looking for work anyway. The other teams quit within 12 months, and he was bought out within 16 months because most clients had stopped paying and sued him since he had no one to do the actual work. All because he thought I wouldn't comply with his own malicious request. Edit. It was a 15-man company. Am I the jerk for dropping him and his daughter off at a rental car place states away from home? Long story short, I, 27 female, started seeing 44-year-old Dave 3 years ago. I have 2 sons who are 9 and 6. He has 1 daughter, Anne, who's 17. I booked a road trip for me and my sons roughly 3 months ago. A road trip consisting of roughly 26 hours worth of driving with stops in between. This is the first time I've ever been financially able to do much of anything with my kids, so I went all out. Planned to stop at every place they had ever asked me to go to, basically. I was beyond excited to surprise them with this trip. We got home 4 nights ago. A week before leaving, my Dave decides he wants to go with me and bring Anne as a bonding experience. We do not live together, and Anne has never liked me because I'm boring. She has said this to my face. So Dave thinks it will be good. I didn't really want either of them to go, but thought, what the heck, why not? This could be good for us. Boy, was I wrong. From the moment Anne got into my car, she started complaining about absolutely everything. It was too crowded, too loud, we were taking too many stops, the boys were too annoying, and need to quiet down and chill. We get to a hotel 9 hours in, PA. It's around 3 p.m. at this point. Dave asks if he can take a drive with Anne because she was getting irritated with the kids. I told him he could if he makes it quick because I needed to go get dinner supplies. 3 hours later, he shows back up. Him and Anne went out to eat. So I make a comment saying, "You didn't think we wanted to eat too?" And Anne snaps back with, "I don't think we asked." After comments like this for days, I finally snapped. My boys are now saying they just want to go home because several times Dave told my kids to be quiet because of his kids' comfort. At this point, I haven't done anything with my kids because the queen would have a fit if we pulled off anywhere, and Dave at this point basically refused to let me drive despite me arguing. In my car. So I snapped, told him to pull over. When he finally does, I drive to the nearest car rental and tell them to get out of my car. Dave and Anne both start flipping out. Anne saying she isn't going to get in a car that has bed bugs. Dave saying he didn't want to take separate vehicles and didn't have enough money for a rental because the queen spent over $1,500 in 4 days. So I say, I don't believe I asked, and take off. They were close to 800 miles from home. It took them 4 days to get home due to lack of money and needing to borrow. I'm being told I'm a selfish jerk. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Time to stop seeing Dave. They should have thought about their behavior before jacking your trip and being rude to both of you and your boys. I hope the rest of the trip was enjoyable with your boys. OP, it was fantastic without them. I'm so glad to hear that, and I hope you don't really believe you are the jerk. I bet the look on their faces was priceless. The only way OP was being a bit of a jerk was in not kicking Dave and Ann out of the car on the first day, preferably the second time Ann groused. The first time, she should have gotten a warning. They lost several days of enjoyment because OP didn't slam her foot to the floor the second that brat opened her mouth. Not the jerk. I hope you broke up with him too. OP. Oh, I did. Also, don't date men who are that much older than you and broke. Would I be the jerk if I got the same piercings as a coworker who lied? I feel kind of stupid even typing this, but people in my surroundings are decided 50-50 in this matter, so here goes. Last week, I, 23 female, was talking to my coworker, let's call her Emma, 22, about the piercings I was going to get in my ears. I'm quite a pierced person and have worked out curated ears for friends before as a hobby, so I decided to do mine as well. I made a template and everything and showed it to my coworker who really liked it. Yesterday I went to work and was excited to talk about my upcoming appointment. Another coworker suddenly accused me of being a copycat, saying that I must have known Emma just got those piercings done. I confronted Emma, and sure enough, she got the exact same piercings as on my template, even some I already had. Her ears were bright red. She must have got them done the day before or something. She accused me of lying, stating that she had come up with the idea herself and I was being jealous of her new look. I was baffled. Instead of arguing further, I just grabbed my phone and showed all the other coworkers, who had gathered by now, the messages about my piercing plans. I also showed them the template I had sent her. Emma broke down crying, saying how much she loved the template and how she wanted it herself so bad she couldn't wait. I asked her why she didn't just tell me and told her I wouldn't have minded if she got the same thing, but she said she couldn't stand the idea of having the same thing as someone else. She had this thing about being one of a kind. She thought that if she got them first, I wouldn't dare to copy her, and that would be it. I told her I was still getting the piercings, and she flipped out, yelling and crying about how they were hers now, and I can't copy her or she wouldn't be original anymore. She locked herself in the bathroom crying for half an hour when I said I didn't care about that. I still have my appointment to go get them. I curated the template to me because I have scarring on my ears, so the piercings need to go in specific places, so can't really change it up. I do feel bad about how Emma is taking it and don't think she would get over it fast if I got them. We work together every day. So, would I be the jerk if I got the same piercings? Not the jerk. Emma is an entitled brat. You're adults, not even teenagers. It doesn't matter who goes then first either. It's not like anyone's trying to steal the other's entire appearance. OP. Indeed. I would have loved it if she had told me she wanted them as well. Heck, we could have gotten them done together. Emma legitimately needs professional help because crying for an hour over not being original is bonkers. Not the jerk. But can I make a suggestion that you don't confide until after you get things done so no one can accuse you of copying? I'd also suggest you treat coworkers for exactly what they are, coworkers. Don't get caught up in their drama and keep it professional. Emma has issues, and if the place you work for has an HR department, make sure you document everything that happened, as I suspect she'll try and enact revenge at some point. OP. Yeah, I think I'm going to do that from now on. I tend to share a lot when I'm excited. Some coworkers were friends before we started working together. All of us do tend to hang out outside of our hours as well. Thanks for the advice. Hunt frogs on our farm? Have fun in prison. This is another story about Pops, my grandfather, and how he got some sweet, sweet revenge on squatters and poachers. This goes way back to the 90s, to be exact 1998. I was 10 years old. My farm back then was Pop's family farm. It's way up north in Ontario. My farm is not a small farm in the area. It's the biggest plot of land. Not only that, it has the most workable farmland. There's about 80 acres of good workable farmland that's including pastures and another 120 acres of dense forest and marshland. It's in northern Ontario. Back in the 90s, northern Ontario had a breakout of this type of moth They would spin silk high in the trees. Really, they caused no harm other than a nuisance, but the government had the great idea to crop dust the forests on Ontario, causing an ecological disaster. With the loss of the moths and the chemicals in the water, a type of frog was nearly wiped out. We called them leopard frogs. They're green with these big black spots on them. After that, they were put on the endangered species list. The back end of my property runs off into a small marshland and into the lake, and back in the 90s, Pops was having a problem with poachers. They were camping in the back area, hunting out of season, and eating turtles out of the marsh, and just messing up the property. Back in the day, that forest was my playground. I know that area like the back of my hand, but unfortunately, I had a run-in with the poachers. So of course, I went out there with my pops and our local lawman, but they had packed up and were gone before we got there. Unfortunately, they returned the week after. Pops tried to find them with the lawman several times, but with no luck. Now here's where all the information from the start comes into play. Pops, as hard as he tried, wanted them gone, but it wasn't working. Pops was also a fisherman, and his favorite bait were bones, other than the leopard frog. But because they made it on the endangered species list, the use was outright banned. Pops, being the responsible fisherman and generally caring about the land, figured, oh well, now's the time to get two birds with one stone. He approached the Canadian Fishery and Game Wardens and through a lot of work got in touch with an ecological survey team who decided that our little marsh was the perfect place for a spawning pool to raise little leopard frogs. And that's what happened. The back area where our marsh was fenced in, and they started bringing tadpoles to brood in our marsh. Not only that, the poachers' hunting ground happened to fall in the protected zone. Once the work happened, it took a full year for the poachers to return. But Pops had a weapon now, his phone. Once he could hear that familiar sound of shots going off, where no fire should be made, a single phone call to the game warden. They had over a dozen wardens up there in less than an hour, and the poachers were caught. Not only were they caught with the carcass of a bear and other animals, they were found with buckets and buckets of our little leopard frogs. They were caught, but not only did they hunt without a license, they also poached an endangered species to be used as an illegal bait. From what we learned through the locals, they did 2 years in big-time prison, all because Pops cared about the little froggies. Oh yeah, over 5 million of the frogs were raised on that marsh over 10 years, being released throughout marshes and forests in Ontario. You would have a hard time finding a leopard frog across Ontario that was not somehow related to a frog that came out of my little marsh. Am I the jerk for not returning to my childcare job because the mother fired me over a mistake? I, 19 male, had a job taking care of 2 kids who were 2 and 3, a dog, and doing light housework 4 days a week for a single mom who got my contact info from a business card I had posted in my dad's pediatric therapy office. Ever since the weather started getting warmer, the dog has been shedding like crazy. Like, I would vacuum the couch, and the next day it would look like I hadn't. I would lightly tug on the dog's hair and would pull out huge tufts. The dog's been scratching all the time, etc. My dad's dog has a double coat like theirs, and one morning when I was leaving for work, I packed his brushing tool in my bag. When the kids were napping, I spent a full hour outside brushing the dog. The dog seemed to enjoy being brushed, and after an hour, there was a huge pile of hair that had been brushed out. Before vacuuming it up, I sent the mom what I thought would be a funny text saying, "Brushed a whole new dog out of the dog's coat." Looking back, I realized that maybe I should have asked first, but at the time, it seemed like something that was within the scope of caring for the dog. The mom went ballistic. She called me, yelling, saying that by brushing the dog and not letting the hair fall out on its own, I was causing harm somehow. She said I was an idiot, and she can't believe she trusted me with her kids, and that today was my last day. I was extremely upset because I had been with the family for 3 months and she had never yelled at me like that before. I left as soon as she got home because she was still fuming. I immediately lined up a job with another family and am supposed to start on Monday. The mom who yelled at me called me 2 days later, saying that she was very sorry about the misunderstanding and that firing me was an overreaction. I told her I was no longer available, and she started crying about how hard it was to find a new sitter for her special needs kids. When I stood firm, she started texting my dad and asking him to do something. My dad is annoyed at being dragged into this, and while he respects my decision, he wishes I would keep watching her kids for a short time to keep the peace. I hate that I put anyone in an awkward position, but I also don't want to work for someone like that. Am I the jerk? Edit, because I don't want to have to keep clarifying. My dad is not an ABA therapist, he's a physical therapist. Not the jerk at all. Your dad is kind of lousy for putting this on you. He's a therapist, and he can't see the instability of the mother and how it endangers you? I mean, if this is how she reacts to a completely normal thing to do with a dog, God forbid anything ever go wrong with one of the kids. You're an adult, and accusations against you could lead to legal problems. Stay far away from her. OP. I should have clarified, my dad isn't a mental health therapist, and he is mostly on my side. He's just annoyed that she's making her business his business just because we have the same last name. Good point about the legal problems. It's so weird because I've had things happen with the kids. Bumped head, scraped knee, and she was totally reasonable about it. Maybe she was just having a really bad day, but I don't want to risk it. Not the jerk. First, brushing a dog who is growing their coat does not hurt the dog, and the fact that she thinks it does is kind of disturbing. Second, even if she believes it hurts the dog, it's something that most dog owners do. So rather than simply telling you that she prefers not to have it done, she had a fit at a 19-year-old babysitter. This is not a person you want to continue working for. I wouldn't want to go back and have her accuse me of things based on her crazy beliefs. Not the jerk. What kind of idiot thinks it's harmful to brush a dog? The dog was probably relieved to be rid of that loose hair. Build my fence and do it exactly as I designed. So I've posted several stories about my pops, my grandfather, on Reddit over the last week, and well, some people seem to like them. Pops was an old school, rough as nails WW2 vet farmer. Not only that, in my small town in northern Ontario, Pops and his brother were the only contractors in town. Pops took a job from an out-of-towner, some rich guy from Toronto who purchased a small plot of land on the lake for his vacation home. This guy hired Pops to put up a fence all around the house, a 6-foot-high monster fence. The thing is still up today. It's really ugly and completely out of place with the natural beauty of the area. From day one, while marking out lines, this guy was a real jerk to Pops, a real nitpick who thought himself as a top-tier designer. Pops went to the guy because of a problem with his design, and the guy didn't give a hoot. When Pops tried to point out the problem, the guy was like, "I don't care about your opinion. I paid you. You work for me. Get it done. I have guests coming up at the end of the month, so get it done. Don't call me with any problems. Just get it done." Pops, being Pops, he just gave an okie dokie. Can I get that in writing? The guy did just that, and Pops did exactly what he wanted. The guy got his fence built. Pops told one of the townies that lives near the road leading to the place to give him a call if he sees Mr. Moneybags show up. It took 3 weeks, and the guy showed up with his entire family in tow. Pops got a call from the townie telling him, "Hey, you're about to get a visitor." Well, as I said, Pops followed the directions exactly as written, a fence completely around the house, about 40 feet away from the place. What the plans didn't have was an opening for the driveway or any gates to get in. I wish I was there to see the guy's face when he got to his nice vacation home. I would have loved to have seen his face when he showed up to the farm to tell off Pops. When Pops told me this story, he said he was sitting on the front porch sipping on his whiskey as that guy rolled up. The guy screamed at Pops, calling him a dumb jerk, and Pops just smiled and said, "Remember when you told me to build it exactly as you designed? If you don't like it, redesign it and fix it yourself." As I said, the guy still owns the place and he stays far out of town. And that fence is still up today. It's really ugly, but it has stood the test of time. Oh, I also know I have horrible spelling and grammar, and I'll be straight with you. I not only left school for a GED at 16, school was no good for me. I also have a learning disability, so bear with me. Edit. Forgot to add, they had to go down to the general store and buy a chainsaw to cut their way in. Am I the jerk for telling my coworker the real reason why nobody wants to go to her place? So I, 27 female, am a teacher at a high school. The department I'm in likes to stay close and social with each other, so we do these potluck hangouts sometimes. My place has been dubbed the Fun House, as everyone likes the old school games I have, as it gives them a sense of nostalgia, and me and my boyfriend's cooking is great. I have this coworker, let's call her Pam, who desperately wants to host one, but always gets shot down. I asked another teacher why, and they told me her place stinks. Literally. I didn't believe it till I went there to pick up my game system. It's a very foul, strong, and noticeable smell, but Pam seems to not notice it. Not too long ago, we had a February break, and all the teachers decided it would be nice for another get-together. Pam offered her place again, but the teachers said they would prefer my house. Pam protested for a bit, then finally agreed. On the day of the get-together, while me and my boyfriend were cleaning, Pam comes hours early and later on begins to study my cleaning methods. Pam then makes comments on how I clean with too many products. I shrug it off and said that's how my mom taught me to clean. She then goes on this rant about how being overly clean is not a good thing and tries to label what I'm doing as a disorder. I then ask her about her cleaning habits. Pam tells me that she doesn't use any products, just a rag and hot water. She doesn't change out trash bags unless they show signs of tear and doesn't mop, just sweeps. Me and my boyfriend exchanged looks, but didn't say anything. At this time, the get-together starts and everything is going fine until Pam starts to tell everyone about how I clean and tries to make a joke of it. Everyone awkwardly laughs, but she just keeps going with this bad joke. Annoyed, I then tell her that maybe she should use me as a model on how to clean her house. She asks me what do I mean by that. I held my tongue until she started complaining about why no one wants to come to her place, especially since her place is a nice condo, and mine is just a small house on the odd side of town. I then tell her the truth, saying that her place smells awful. She thought I was making a cruel joke and laughed till she noticed how everyone was silent. This sent her into a rage, and she calls everyone fake and calls me a jerk for making up such a crazy lie about the smell of her place before storming off. Pam has stopped talking to all of us and even skips out on our Monday meetings. I tried talking to her in private, but she just gets mad. Maybe I should have kept my mouth shut like the others. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. She sat there and criticized your normal cleaning habits. It's a two-way street. She's more than likely just embarrassed for not realizing that she's dirty. Not the jerk. She walked right into that one. Although the kinder thing would have been that another teacher at this school would have brought up this issue in private after Pam repeatedly tried to host events. Everyone sucks here. She was being rude, has a dangerous mentality about her own cleanliness. But was it necessary to call her out in front of everyone else? I might have changed the subject because Pam was making a jerk of herself, and I'm guessing that no one else felt that her criticisms of you were valid. Instead, you said the quiet part out loud and humiliated her. When you socialize with the same people you work with, sometimes you read the room and realize that no good will come from putting her down. She may also have some very odd issue and that she can't smell things very well, or perhaps she was brought up that way, which would be even more condemning to her. I like this reply. Sometimes people seem to think that if someone is being a jerk, they're justified in crushing them, no matter what. Obviously, Pam was so wrong, but clearly every one of the others in the group understood what OP does not. Some things are better left unsaid, but if it needed to be said, it should have been in a private conversation. Well, what do you think? Did OP take it too far or not? Please let us know.
No, Pam got exactly what she deserved. You let people get away with this crap forever and they'll never stop doing it.
Bin everything in this room? You got it, boss. Not my own malicious compliance, but overheard, then witnessed at work. A few months ago, the two owners at my work had a huge disagreement which has escalated to full-blown screaming matches in the middle of the office and nearly into several physical fights. It came to a head last Friday, and owner A decided to pack it all in and leave effective immediately. After lunch, owner B called the warehouse manager up to the office and pointed at owner A's office, situated just off the main open plan office, and said, "I'm just too stressed to deal with this, so I'm going home. Bin everything in that room. I don't want to see a shred of evidence that owner A worked here when I get back on Monday morning." The warehouse manager looked at the offending office and back to owner B. "Are you sure you want to bin everything, boss?" Owner B looked ready to explode already, and apparently this extra bit of clarification sent him over the edge.
Did I stutter? Get rid of everything in there, or you can clear out your desk too.
And so owner B stormed off, and our warehouse manager took out his walkie-talkie and summoned up two of his warehouse staff and relayed the instructions. The warehouse workers questioned it and got the same answer. Yes, absolutely everything. And so they got to work. Owner A's personal effects were put into a box and sealed up to be taken to him by one of the purchasing staff who lived nearby. Everything else was bagged up and put into the bins. The paperwork and stationery were boxed up to be shredded and destroyed. Next, the monitor and printer were taken to the bins, followed by the desk and chair. When I left at 4 p.m., the warehouse workers were just starting to take down the wall-mounted bookshelves. I would have expected them to stop there, but when I got in this morning, there was nothing in the office. The curtains and blinds are gone, plug sockets and light fittings taken off the walls, leaving exposed wires, and tiles removed from the ceiling, showing the ductwork and wiring above. The carpet that owner A requested be put in was torn up, leaving the underlay. Even the door with owner A's name plaque on it was taken off the hinges. It looks like a construction site in there. Owner B came in at 10 this morning, took one look at it, and started screaming his head off and demanding to see the warehouse manager. He wanted whoever did this to put this right and then get off site as they were fired. If no one owned up, then the whole warehouse shift was fired. Our warehouse manager, never one to give a hoot, just peered into the office and said, "You said bin everything, boss. Looks like they did," and walked off. Owner B looked like he was going to burst a vessel. Am I the jerk for kicking out my sister completely from my house when my nephew broke my son's things? Finding out about my son James was a huge surprise for me 8 months ago. He's 6 and I'm 28, male, still adjusting to it. My sister lives with me, by the way. She's been here over a year because lockdown pretty much ruined her business. My sister couldn't afford the rent anymore for her store. Her and my nephew, AJ, who's 9, moved to my place. Right now, she's working, but not enough hours to earn her own place. Now, it doesn't really bother me that they're living with me. Sometimes AJ can be a lot, though. She has a bad habit of spoiling him too much due to his dad not being around. After finding out about James and having him over more often, AJ has hated he's not the only kid in the house anymore. 3 months ago, my son's grandma, who's his legal guardian, had to undergo surgery. She's still recuperating, so it's going to take some time for her to do more physically. In the meantime, James came to live with me. He's already gone through enough in his life, and I just want to make the process easier on him so he feels comfortable with me as his dad. My place is a 3-bedroom, so before it was each in their own individual rooms, but I told my sister to move AJ's things in with her. Of course, my nephew had a fit, and she was mad because he's lived there longer than James. I normally don't play my house, my rules, but for my son I did. She's still pretty bitter about it. AJ doesn't tolerate James around at all. He's mean to him for no reason. One time at breakfast, he pushed James because he wanted to sit where he was sitting. I've had talks with AJ to get him to understand, also with my sister to get her kid under control. Because for one, James' grandma and I are working out a custody arrangement, so him living here was always going to happen regardless of her condition, which meant he'd always get his own room. My sister doesn't do much because she says it's my fault for bringing James in, knowing that this would devastate AJ. On Tuesday, AJ came to James' room and pulled everything out. His clothes from his drawers, broke some of his toys, and the ones that upset him the most is he broke his lava lamp that my son loves. His mom bought it for him a few years ago, and he uses it as a nightlight. I was just so mad for my son because he was crying. It made me react badly on my sister for not stopping it in the first place, but she says she was in the garage. Straight up just told her AJ can't be here anymore, and they need to get out since she obviously can't parent him to control himself. My sister pleaded with me not to because they don't have anywhere to go. We're cut off from family, but I still told them they had to go. They left the next morning. Right now, she says that they have to stay on a friend's couch. She won't stop telling me how awful it is that I threw them out. Now they're struggling even more. I wanted to help them, but nothing was being done about AJ, and it just made me snap. Am I the jerk? AJ is 9 years old, which means he's old enough for his mom to have a conversation with him about his behavior. Not the jerk. Give James a big hug and let him pick out a new lava lamp of his choice. OP. He was really upset about that. It hurt, and it sucks he doesn't want another one because to him, it won't be the same. You're not the jerk, and it's pretty obvious. Your sister seems to think she owned the house you were all living in. AJ was there longer? Bringing your kid to live with you would upset AJ? What a weird thing to say. The world does not revolve around her and her kid, especially when staying in someone else's home. So she's allowed to have a kid around, but you can't? In your house? Your sister has issues and needs to be taught how to parent. Your son being subjected to bullying is not okay. Giving your sister a chance to discipline her kid before kicking them out for real would have been fair, but I don't blame you for your reaction. I agree with all of this, except the last part. The sister has had 8 months to discipline her kid and chose not to. This wasn't an overreaction to a one-time event. It was the straw that broke the camel's back. No more chances owed, not the jerk. Am I the jerk for not following an old tradition regarding the name of my son? My family has a lot of traditions that come from generations ago, like dishes we eat certain days, or give a boutique to every woman on their birthday, etc. All those traditions are based on a couple from generations ago. I have a great relationship with my dad. He's always been very attentive and supportive to me. Not that his tradition would have let him do otherwise anyway. My fiance and I are going to be parents soon, and my parents are very hyped about it. They already gifted me some stuff for the baby and all. The drama started yesterday when my dad asked me to talk in private. He said he was proud of me, that I was going to be a good father and all of that stuff. Then he said he was going to be there for whatever I, my fiance, and little Timothy VI needed. Timothy is my name, as well as my dad's. One of the old traditions is that the first son inherits the name of his father, who inherited the name of his father, and so on. The same happens with the first daughter of each generation, but it's another name, of course. The thing is, my fiance and I already decided a name for our son, and it'll be Aiden, not Timothy. Neither of us like that name, so that's out of the options. I corrected my dad, and he seemed surprised at first, but then said it was a cute name, and that what he said stayed the same anyway. This morning, I got a call from my mom asking me why I didn't want to continue the family tradition, and that I made my dad cry. I told her that although I feel bad for my dad, I wasn't going to change the name my fiance and I picked. Am I the jerk? Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk, or is his mom? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for telling my dad the reason I don't respect him is because stepmom always tells him what to do? Title sounds bad, but hear me out. I, 16 female, live with my dad, 38 male, and now new stepmom Amanda, 31 female, and step-siblings Kate and Bo, who are 9 and 11. My dad has this problem where he just totally bows down to whatever woman gets with him. Every girlfriend he's ever had since my mom passed when I was 7 has been the one calling the shots with him. They'd complain about anything, and he'd end up handling it to please them so they'd stick around. It doesn't help that he's only ever dated one crappy woman after another. Within the last few years, I've stopped listening to my dad or any of his girlfriends when they try to boss me around, on the girlfriend's orders usually, because I'm tired. Dad has said I'm going through the rebellion phase, like I'm just being an angsty teen with no real problems. Amanda has taken issue with my bad behavior and is constantly criticizing me and complaining to my dad to straighten me out, and so he's constantly on my case too. It all came to a head this week when Amanda got mad at me for not letting her kids play with my NES. It's old and delicate, and her kids are not. I told her to buzz off, and if she wanted to keep her kids entertained, then she can let them play with her Switch, which she won't because they'll break it. So after that, she stormed off crying to my dad, who stormed into my room to complain at me for being so darn disrespectful to him and his wife. He said I needed to learn some respect for him, but I just lost it and cut him off by screaming at him. I said I don't respect him because he's a chronically whipped loser who would rather coddle his jerk wife than stand up to her BS. He looked really offended and got quiet before yelling that I was grounded, then he stormed out, slamming my door. Later, my grandma called and said I was being childish and need to shape up and apologize to my dad because he keeps a roof over my head and food in my stomach, and that's no way to treat him. Am I the jerk? Be quiet, don't speak, just take a seat and don't say a word. Okay, no problem. A little backstory. This takes place in late 2014, and I was pretty fresh out of university at my first real job post-graduation. I landed a junior position for a construction firm, putting up the condos around the greater Toronto area at the peak of the condo boom. I was lucky enough to be assigned to the lead safety team, and the lead engineer was my direct supervisor. The company I was working for had just scored a huge contract to re-engineer/fix the balcony's glass on several condo buildings in the downtown area, all managed by the same management company. The reason is the glass they used on the balconies had a tendency to randomly shatter, sending thousands of tiny pebble-sized shards of glass raining down 10 to 35 stories. The official reason was a manufacturing defect. The real reason was prioritizing form over function. The company that built the buildings didn't factor in all of the vibration from the high winds and the heat from the city, and the solution was literally 5 centimeters of rubber, a thicker shatterproof tempered glass, and millions of dollars. But with that out of the way, I was employed in the safety department. We had a difficult time with the design/art department. They cared about form over function and safety. We were at the tail end of a project and about to break ground on a condo development. 2 35-story buildings surrounded by townhomes just off the lakeshore. Unfortunately, to the art department's dismay, we had to add in a wind wall right where the building was situated. It was a high wind zone because of the lake and the highway. There was this wind tunnel that would pass the back road of the building and winds at 100 kilometers plus. It's fast enough to knock you off your feet, but the design department hated it and thought it was ugly and cost sales. After months of back and forth between the two departments, my boss set up a meeting with the design department and put me in charge of doing the presentation, the new junior engineer, because in all honesty, it was just not an important thing. It was just to get them off of our backs. Well, it comes to the day of the presentation, and I show up a little bit early to set up, and I go find the boss of the department. I had never met the man before. Well, I get to his desk and try to introduce myself. I was met with a,
Be quiet. We're waiting for one of the dummies from upstairs. Just be quiet and don't say a word and take a seat.
So that's what I did. I text my boss and explained what happened, and he said just wait. Don't say a word and just wait. So I did. 20 minutes passes and you can see the boss getting visibly agitated. Another 20 minutes passes and the man is seething with rage and makes a call. My boss texts me and he says the guy is going to call you in a few minutes. You have permission to say what you want. Well, I'm sitting in the dead silent meeting area and the boss makes a big spectacle of coming out and saying,
Everyone be quiet. I'm going to call this jerk and see what's the holdup.
Well, my phone starts to ring and I answer. Before the guy says a thing, I spoke. I'm sorry, I can't talk right now. I am trying to start a meeting, but some idiot won't let me. And I hung up. The man's face went red. He didn't stay around for the meeting. He went to try to chew my boss out. It didn't work. And the meeting went off with no problems. And it ended the issue with the design department. I only stayed at that job for about a year until my boss recommended me for a better job, lead safety at a different company. I stayed with them until last year when I decided to do my own thing. Entitled mother thinks her son gets a free birthday cake just because it's his birthday. This happened a few years ago. My family and I were eating at a restaurant and were simply amused onlookers and weren't involved in the whole incident. We were seated in an area of the restaurant that had 4 moderately sized tables, 3 of which were occupied by my family, a nice family and an entitled family. We were all in close enough proximity that we could easily hear what was being discussed at the other tables. The days before lockdown. And I learned that it was the daughter of the nice family's birthday. I think she must have been either 5 or 6. The birthday girl's parents had handed over a birthday cake to the restaurant servers before being seated earlier on to surprise her after eating their main meal. And so a few servers brought the cake out while singing happy birthday to the girl and had lit the candles for her, and the kid was adorable and super happy. Now, the cake looked like a kid's sugary dream come true. It was super colorful and looked delicious. Unfortunately, the kid on the entitled family's table also thought the cake looked delicious and was eyeing it like a hungry little gremlin. The entitled mother spoke up to one of the servers after they had all finished singing happy birthday and said, "Excuse me, it's my son's birthday. Are you gonna bring us our birthday cake?" Now, her son must have been a little older, like 8 or 9, and I don't know this for sure, but from the brief confusion turned mischief on his face, I'm going to assume it wasn't actually his birthday. The poor waitress looks puzzled and says, "Oh, I'm sorry, we were only given 1 cake earlier. What's your name? And do you remember who you gave the cake to?" The entitled mother looks at her like she's grown a second head and snaps,
What are you talking about? It's my son's birthday, and he deserves a free birthday cake just as much as that girl does.
At this point, me and my sister both understand that this woman thinks the restaurant supplied the birthday cake instead of the family giving it to them beforehand, and we cover our mouths trying not to laugh at this woman's idiocy. The waitress catches on too and continues to explain politely that the entitled mother has misunderstood the happy birthday celebration that the servers gave the girl on the other table, and this entitled mother looks super upset, probably realizing that she's made herself look like a right idiot.
Well, my son should get a free dessert anyway. It's his birthday.
Entitled mother tries to avoid embarrassment by dialing up her entitlement. I'm sorry, ma'am, but we don't offer free desserts here for any reason, the waitress responds. I know full well that in actual fact, the servers sometimes give out very small free desserts on occasion, usually on birthdays, but only when the families are being kind and appreciative. Because my youngest sister once received one. I'm talking like one scoop in a little bowl with some sprinkles and some whipped cream. But hey, free dessert. But obviously, I was gonna remain quiet and keep watching this lady embarrass herself. And embarrass herself she did. She started kicking up more of a fuss and throwing a tantrum, and even encouraged her son to make a fuss too. The dad on their table looked like he was thinking about filing for divorce, but otherwise remained silent instead of telling his wife to knock it off. Eventually, the manager was summoned, and this entitled woman proceeded to shout some more until she was told that if she didn't stop shouting, she would be asked to leave. At this point, she had ordered food, but hadn't received it yet, and thankfully, she shut up. She kept muttering under her breath about how she was gonna leave a bad review, and even had the gall to ask the nice family for some slices of their daughter's cake. Obviously, they said no, especially after seeing how they had treated the poor waitress, and it was super satisfying to see the entitled mother get shot down again. My rude Karen neighbor demands I help her with her car problems. I live in a condo/townhome with 4 other neighbors belonging to our condo/property board. We all have our own driveways on the property. When I first moved in, my neighbor, Jane, who doesn't have a car, said we could use her driveway from time to time if needed for making space for snow removal. I have 2 cars. Since the driveways are only 1 lane, one of my cars is always blocked in by the other. One day a few months ago, I wanted to take one of my cars to the car wash because it had been sitting there for quite some time. So I took car number 1 out of my driveway, parked it in her driveway, and then took car number 2 out and went on my way to get the car washed. I thought since she had said it was okay, I would leave car number 1 in her driveway until I got back, rather than putting it back in my driveway and having to move the cars around again when I got back. When I got home, Jane was banging on my door furiously. She told me that if I parked my car in her driveway again, she'd call the police. I was a bit confused because she had said it was okay. I ended up trying to be the bigger person and apologizing. I said I was sorry for the misunderstanding and that I wouldn't use her driveway anymore. After that, she was very unfriendly whenever we had crossed paths, totally ignored me if I'd say hello. Fast forward to now. She has a used car that she purchased. Her battery is not working, and she knocked on my door asking for a boost. She has seen me give a boost to another neighbor not too long ago. She said she was now running late for an appointment and really needed my help. I said, sorry, can't help, and I closed my door without another word. Another neighbor, who knows about Jane threatening to call the police, saw this whole interaction and thought I was a bit harsh and should have just helped Jane and given her a boost. So, am I the jerk? Edit. So, I'm creepily listening and watching through my window. The other guy is helping her out. He got her booster cables ready and just slipped on the ice and fell. He kind of landed right on the fender of her car while trying to save himself from falling, and now there's a dent in it. She's losing her crap and asking him how he's going to fix this. I was starting to feel like the jerk from a lot of the comments, but now I'm kind of glad I didn't help. Edit for clarification. This was the first and last time I had put my car there. Another neighbor who doesn't have a car extended the same offer to us. I am also friends with the previous owners. They said they had always parked one of their cars in her driveway and she had never had a problem. They told me they did this on numerous occasions during the 9 years they lived here. I told them this whole story. They were surprised by her reaction. Also, where I live, snow removal is not us shoveling snow. It's a company that comes by with a big tractor and removes snow. Sometimes we can be waiting several hours for them to come. That's kind of why I didn't think 10 minutes would be a big deal when she had said I could park there while waiting for the snow removal to come, which could have potentially been hours. Not the jerk. The fact that her instinct was to threaten to call the police speaks volumes of her character. You owe her nothing. OP. Exactly, that was a bit much. Disagreements happen. I had my part in it. But threatening to call the police over a misunderstanding that wasn't putting anyone in danger? That's why I was just like, no. Well, what do you think? Should OP have helped Karen boost her car or not? Please let us know.
I would have told her, sure, I'll be out in 5 minutes. Then I wouldn't have answered the door for the rest of the day.
No, I don't work for the university. Leave me alone. We, equals girlfriend and me, met our first real Karen in the wild, and OMG, I'll never look at this channel the same again because I can now truly imagine some of the situations that get shared here. Backstory. I live in a town in the Netherlands which has a university that is also internationally known. As a result, we get a lot of foreign students here, which, in my opinion anyway, is what makes this place so nice to live in. When shopping, for example, you can easily run into people speaking English, obviously, German, French, Spanish, and there are even Chinese and Japanese students here. I kind of enjoy that international character, especially when you keep in mind that my hometown is actually rather small. Anyway, my girlfriend has an overseas cousin living in Japan who got accepted to attend the university. And since my girlfriend hadn't seen her cousin for many years, she was obviously really looking forward to meeting up again once we learned of this. Things to know. My girlfriend and me don't live together, but we go visit each other every other weekend, either her or my place. Obviously, she came over to mine this weekend. Another thing is that I often enjoy wearing a body warmer versus a regular coat, which apparently sometimes makes you stand out a bit, but really not that much more from someone wearing a red or bright yellow jacket, which is sometimes also a thing over here. Alas, when this incident took place, the cousin had been here for roughly a week or so. The meet. So it's Saturday. The weather is very nice, and off we go. Now, the university doesn't really have a dormitory, as you often see in the US, but from what I have heard, they do maintain a few buildings around town where some students are invited to. Most students need to take care of their own housing though. But the cousin got lucky and was invited to stay in one of the buildings maintained by the university itself. When we got there, it was somewhat busy because there were a few new students moving in, so we met up outside in front of the building. My girlfriend and her cousin were very happy to actually meet in person again, so yeah, first moments there was a lot of Japanese going back and forth, but eventually they decided to switch to English because they figured this was more fair towards me, and now I could also join the conversation. I didn't really mind though. I actually learned a few new Japanese phrases. So here we are, talking in English about stuff, when we're suddenly met with,
Finally, some service. You can stop talking to them now and get to work. Here.
and when the three of us look over to where this tirade was coming from, we see a filled-out woman with that hairstyle, sunglasses, the works, as she drops 2 suitcases right next to me, followed by a bag she was wearing over her shoulder, and then proceeds to walk towards the building. What on earth? Madam, what are you doing? You shouldn't just leave your bags here. I tell her, but to no avail. She completely ignores me and just walks inside the building. My girlfriend is confused. I tell the ladies that we're just going to stand somewhere away from the suitcases since these aren't ours. When the cousin asks if this isn't dangerous because someone could steal them, my girlfriend and I basically tell her, oh well, we're not going to look after someone's luggage after they just insulted us. My girlfriend excuses herself to me and explains to her cousin, in Japanese again, that the culture in the Netherlands is very different from that in Japan and that she needs to be careful about this because some people might otherwise take advantage of her sense of morale. The twist. Because I couldn't really participate in that conversation, I started paying more attention to our surroundings again and noticed that a student had come out of the building, noticed the suitcases, and was now looking around. When he noticed me looking at him, he asked me if I knew whose suitcases these were, and I told him, in my language, some arrogant American jerk has left these behind. And the very moment I told him, I noticed that he immediately knew who I was talking about. He tells me that she was the mother of one of the new students, and she had been nothing but trouble for the past few days. However, because they couldn't really do anything about her, they just tried to ignore her as best as possible. Also, because the daughter was nothing like her mother at all, and even profusely apologized several times for the somewhat mental behavior. One of the reasons the daughter decided to attend this university was also to get away from her mom in the first place. Fortunately enough, the mother would be gone in a few days, and that would be the end of it, so people just figured they'd cope while it lasted. Next, he grabs the suitcases, declines my offer to help, and tells me that he'll take them inside the building to keep them safe, and he'll let the student know about it. Say, if anyone other than the mean lady asks, please tell them that name has them. Otherwise, could you please just ignore her or something? I know I'm asking a lot, he tells me. I smile, nod, but tell him no promises, and meanwhile, the ladies had switched back to English again. This time, we're talking about shops that are available. The cousin tells us that she's lucky to have found a discounter, Aldi, but it's somewhat far away. After which, girlfriend and me tell her that there's a Lidl closer by, which also is not too expensive. One thing leads to another, and we soon decide to go over there. Also, because girlfriend and me had to do some shopping anyway. The cousin runs inside to grab her bag and some other stuff while girlfriend and me wait outside. The fallout. Sure enough, jerk lady shows up again, spots me and storms over.
Hey, you! Where are my bags?
She yells. I tell her, how should I know? Maybe try asking inside. And she looks upset.
No, that is your job. You go get my bags already, right now.
Is this for real? Are we actually experiencing a Karen in the wild? It was then and there when I decided that I would write this up, especially when I replied, Madam, this isn't my job. I don't work here. She almost cuts me off.
Shut up. Of course it's your job. You're wearing the uniform.
At which point my girlfriend completely loses it in laughter, which visibly annoys the Karen even more. You call that a uniform? My girlfriend stammers. She now officially has the giggles. Poor me. How stupid are you? And she laughs some more, almost doubling over. See, we actually had a small argument about my choice of pants that morning. I wore a rather worn-out pair of jeans, of which the end of the pipes were basically torn in half, because I figured I'd just wear it, despite it being a little bit too long for me. Strong boots, plus little disregard for puddles, just do it, eventually took their toll on the pipes. I think it looks kinda rough and rugged, better than people who wear pants with holes in them, but my girlfriend disagrees, though she does respect my choice, bless her. But yeah, what uniform? Alas, now we had an enraged Karen.
What's your name? I'm going to report you to the management.
She yells at me. My girlfriend's giggles now also started to have their effect on me, so I go, you don't need to know our identification. Even briefly making the gesture a bit, which obviously triggered my girlfriend even further, which in its turn enraged the Karen a whole lot more. She actually turned red.
How dare you make fun of me? This is all your fault. I'll have your job. I'll sue. Just you wait. You're going to pay big time for my damages, and once my lawyers...
And then I followed up on something that I actually remembered more people mentioning on this very same channel, which was already fully in my mind by then. I raised my finger and moved it straight into her face. Much to my surprise, this was the very first time in my entire life I ever did that, it actually worked. She actually piped down, giving me the opportunity to retort. I told you, I do not work here. I do not work for the university. I do not work for this building. I'm a visitor. I even tried to warn you about this, but you chose to ignore me. What kind of idiot just dumps their suitcase next to a complete stranger in front of a building? The shopping. At this time, the cousin comes out again, sees the commotion, but my girlfriend quickly snaps out of her giggles, at least for the moment, which is all I noticed, and beacons her cousin over while she starts walking towards the gate, giving me a quick pat on the back to make me aware of this. So I tell the Karen, go inside. Try asking nicely if someone knows about any unattended suitcases and leave us alone. While I'm starting to follow my girlfriend, which is followed by a,
how dare you?
To which I say, no, how dare you? And we walk away. As we're 5 or so minutes into our walk with casual chatter, my girlfriend suddenly says, she's following us. We decide to ignore her and went our way to the supermarket. We do our shopping. Girlfriend and me even decide on a little courtesy gift. So when we're standing in line before the registers, girlfriend tells her cousin that we'll be paying for the groceries, which almost brought her to tears. She was very appreciative. Really nice girl. And then we got into the second act. Suddenly, the woman started screaming and shrieking that,
I need a manager. Those jerks stole my luggage.
Which immediately sent my girlfriend into giggles again when she murmured, Our Royal Highness masked luggage. She saw Spaceballs just the night before. As could be expected, over here, nothing happened. We paid, bagged our stuff, and left while the woman kept shrieking when I suddenly heard an alarm going off just as we went outside, but for obvious reasons we didn't stick around, nor did we see her following us anymore. We actually did learn what happened though. Aftermath. This evening, my girlfriend gets a text from her cousin asking if we could meet in the park. In the evening. Strange. But we go over there, and sure enough, cousin is there with another girl. This girl turned out to be the Karen's daughter, who immediately apologizes to us, telling us over and over how sorry she was for what had happened. She learned that girlfriend's cousin was somewhat involved in all the happenings and thus asked and pleaded, almost begged her if she would please allow her to apologize to us in person. Writing this up still makes me swallow uneasy. This still gets to me. I feel really bad for that poor girl. At the same time, I also really admire how she manages to distance herself from all the crap that her mother is pulling. Seriously, if she would ever ask for help, then both girlfriend and me will probably step right in, even though we don't know her. Yeah, she was nothing like her mother. Nothing at all. The apple can fall far from the tree, it seems. I honestly felt, and still feel, sorry for her. Really, because she was so sincere. Very honest and really a fun and cheerful person to be around. We're even planning to invite her to a future shopping with the 4 of us. See how that goes. Me and 3 giggling girls. Oh dear. But what happened? Enter the Netherlands, where no one pays any attention to screaming lunatics. Unless, of course, they try to leave a store with stolen goods. It seems she took something out of our cart, but although none of us noticed her doing that, my girlfriend did notice the item, the candy, was missing. So she just grabbed it again from the racks next to the registers, and we checked out as if nothing happened. When we just bagged our things and left, versus getting upset over our missing item, I guess, the Karen lost it and ran after us, which triggered the alarm, which triggered security. And because of her actions, several cashiers already had their eyes on her, so when she did make a run, they immediately got her. No, she didn't spend the night in jail or anything. In the Netherlands, we take great care for our criminals. But according to the daughter, the experience did have its effect on her mother. Not a positive one, though. It seems the mother is going to sue Lidl once she's back in the States because they served someone who stole her luggage. Even the fact that the daughter got her suitcase back afterwards doesn't seem to change this. Tomorrow she'll be gone, though, and we can sleep easy again. My heart goes out to all our US Redditors who risk having to deal with this kind of stupidity on a daily basis. This was a tiring, taxing, and bizarre experience, and I hope I'll never meet another Karen again. Thanks for reading. Am I the jerk for not wanting a prenup with my rich fiance? My fiance, 28 male, and I, 25 female, had previously agreed that I'd quit my job and be a stay-at-home mom because we both had absent parents due to their work and felt neglected when we were little, so we wanted to do it differently for our kids. We decided I'd be the parent to stay home because he has a much higher paying job, which is enough to support a family on, which I'm all right with it because having a parent at home is something that's really important to both of us. However, we made the mistake of not discussing the topic of prenups previously. He assumed because he comes from a rich family and has a highly paid job, I'd automatically understand that a prenup was expected. Whereas I didn't expect anything because I genuinely forgot all about the topic, which was probably ditzy of me. I'm just so in love with this guy and want to marry him that I didn't think anything of the what if we break up situation, which was naive of me, I know. I told him I don't want a prenup because I'd be giving up my career to raise the kids and would be left with nothing financially if we were, God forbid, to separate. It would be a struggle to get back to where I am wage-wise and to find somewhere to live. I come from a poor background, so my parents wouldn't be able to support me aside from letting me and my kids sleep on their 2-seater couch, which isn't a good look for custody agreements. So I gave him a compromise that I'd sign the prenup, but I wouldn't quit my job to be a stay-at-home mom, but he still insists that I sign the prenup and be a stay-at-home mom. Am I the jerk for not wanting a prenup? Edit 1. No contract has been drawn up yet, but verbally, he wants a prenup that offers me nothing at all. My apologies, that was vital information, I should have mentioned it earlier. Edit 2. I appreciate all the comments, thank you. A lot of very valid points have been raised, especially that my fiance's behavior is a red flag. I totally agree. I hate it, but I am honestly reconsidering my relationship. So, he wants you to give up your financial independence in order to raise a family with him, but also wants to make sure you're not legally entitled to any of his wealth should things not work out? Absolutely not the jerk, and do not sign it. OP. Correct. That's the wording I was looking for. Thank you. Tell him you are open to a prenup, but you want to negotiate it in such a way that takes into account what you are giving up, because you make very valid points. Get a lawyer to help you negotiate. It's absolutely reasonable to have something in place that protects both of you, plus any potential kids. It's not just what you are giving up. You should have a reasonable expectation for you and your kids to be taken care of in the same way if he was to suddenly decide that he wants to replace you sometime in the future. If he has a prenup that says you get nothing, then what's stopping him from going out and having other women if he doesn't face any consequences? I'm not saying he can't have a prenup, but you should have one that at least protects you and your kids from being dumped on the street. OP. I agree. Not the jerk. Are you sure you want to be married to this guy? He's clearly showing you who he is and how much or how little he thinks of you. Believe him. 100% not the jerk. If he wants you to give up your financial independence without any future security, I wouldn't sign it unless it had something in there to make sure you'd be financially covered in the case of a separation. Seek some legal advice on how to make sure the prenup is fair if you go down that road. OP. Alright, thank you. Not the jerk. If you're going to drop your career and make no more money yourself, you have every right to want to keep that now for if something happens. He's crazy to think that you'd be okay with being left having nothing because you sacrificed everything to be a stay-at-home mom. OP. Precisely. That's why I'm so flabbergasted that he would want a prenup that doesn't benefit me at all. Not the jerk. Leaning towards you are the jerk. Prenups must be written in a fair manner to avoid the scenario you are describing. Marriages break down. In fact, there is more of a chance your marriage will fail nowadays. Why would you not want a mutually agreed upon set of guidelines to take the acrimony out of a split? 1. It's to protect his family's assets. I can support that. 2. It gives you an opportunity to retain independent legal counsel that will more than likely stipulate spousal support, temporary or permanent. I don't understand why there is this hesitation for prenups. They are the best way to ensure you have a clean-cut separation set aside by both spouses when they are sane, rational, and not muddled up by the roller coasters of emotions associated with divorce. Some might say it's unromantic, but so is going through a divorce. Marriage is about love, yes, but let's stop pretending that it also is not an economic partnership. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her fiance? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for not expecting my daughter to pay for her brother's wedding after she was disinvited due to his fiance? I have a son, John, who's 28, and a daughter, Rita, who's 31, and both are on okay terms with each other. Ever since my husband passed, nearly a decade ago, Rita has stepped up and taken care of all of us financially. She's funded a huge portion of John's life and helped him get a job without debt. She's let me live with her in her house and is very, very soft-spoken and calm. Recently, John proposed to his longtime girlfriend, Sam, and they've begun planning their wedding. Sam and John have made it clear that they want Rita to help them out financially, again, as they're saving up for a house and to have a kid. Sam has a huge family, and everyone there has very close relationships, so they've already cut down on the guests from John's side. Neither I nor Rita care about this, but recently, one of Sam's long-lost childhood friends informed them that she'll be in town during the wedding, so they had to remove one guest because of the venue's rules, and that person was Rita. Sam told John, and John told me that she doesn't want Rita to be there cause they're not very close, and she can always see the couple sometime else. I was rude and questioned her as to why they're removing someone who's helping them out, to which the reply was, I don't like how she's butting into John's life, and that childhood friend is more likable. Rita's hurt and told the couple that she won't be paying a dime for their wedding, and even went as far as planning a trip on the same date with her friends. Now John and Sam are yelling at me, saying that I've spoiled her and made her into an egotistical loser, but Rita's already given them an engagement and a wedding gift, apart from the funding. So I told them that she's done her part, and that childhood friend could cover the expenses. Sam is mad and is threatening to go no contact. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Who removes their sister from the guest list to make room for their fiance's friend? Seriously, that's a massive jerk move. Why should they still expect her to pay for the wedding when she isn't invited? This is so ridiculous, I question whether or not this post is real. OP. Sam's not really fond of Rita, but they've never met without me being there. It's irrelevant whether they like Rita or not. It is rude and baffling to expect her to pay for a wedding from which they have disinvited her. Not the jerk for supporting Rita. Wow, how on earth did your son end up so entitled? Or has Sam been putting this all in his head? How awful for Rita. John and Sam are most definitely the jerks here. Probably because he has been used to Rita providing everything quietly. OP mentioned Rita is very mild-mannered. I hope Rita stops helping them out from now on and lets reality smack them in the face. Am I the jerk for asking a kid to stop playing loud music in a restaurant? I went out for breakfast with my kid at a chain restaurant in the US. When we sat down, a kid at the table next to us started playing music on a cell phone at full volume. It was really loud. I politely asked them to turn the music down or off. The parent looked at me like I was crazy and refused. I got up and asked for a different table because I did not want to listen to someone's loud music throughout my meal. When I sat back down, I apologized to the parent for upsetting them and explained that I am hard of hearing and that excessively loud sounds would make it difficult for me to hold a conversation with my daughter. The parent went off on me, saying that her daughter is autistic and that she had never asked someone to turn their phone volume down in a public place, which this is not. It's a privately owned restaurant. Am I the jerk here? Not the jerk. You were polite. You even apologized. Not the jerk. What an obnoxious parent. The kids should be wearing headphones. I see grown-ups do the same thing on the train all the time. Once, I kindly offered someone the use of my headphones. It shamed the guy enough to turn off the music. Have you ever worked with someone who literally had to be monitored through their entire shift? For a while, I was working in a restaurant that basically lived by the "like a family" mantra. Management knew we all had crap going on and generally took great care of us. Unless you were doing something that was both illegal and harmful, it was basically impossible to get fired from this place. That last point has its pros and cons. Enter Tiff. Tiff was a sweet, sensitive woman with blatantly disabling mental issues. It was obvious to everyone who worked with her that Tiff cared what others thought of her and wanted to do a good job, but she seemed unable to complete most multi-step tasks. After weeks of one-on-one training, she would still need to be given instructions one step at a time and always needed someone to keep her on track. It's cruel, but multiple supervisors complained that Tiff was like a reverse employee, because having Tiff on the roster meant you'd be juggling your job and babysitting her, because there were many, many things Tiff had to be kept from doing. Eventually, Tiff was relegated to stalking duty, a position created entirely for her, and the only thing she was capable of doing in the restaurant. Tiff could not take an order, refill drinks, seat guests, or be in any customer-facing position, nor did she possess the mindfulness to work in back of house, but she was great at stalking. We did have to create a list for Tiff detailing each item that needed to be stocked, and then later modify it to say what time she should restock each item. But once Tiff overcame that hurdle, she ran with it. We had what was perhaps the most well-stocked restaurant that has ever been, and it was because of Tiff. Unfortunately, even after finding Tiff's niche, we still had a lot of strange events unfold. Tiff had to turn her phone into the office when she reported to work because she would disappear to the bathroom for 20+ minutes at a time to stand in the handicap stall and play YouTube at top volume. Why did she stand in the stalls? Apparently, she thought the seats in there were too dirty to sit on. She had access to the cleaning supplies and Lysol that were, conveniently, in the same bathroom, but preferred to just not interact with the toilets in the first place. We had to ban her from using the store phone because, after turning her phone in, she would use the store phone to make regular phone calls throughout the day to her mom and boyfriend. She'd typically talk about her cat and ask about dinner and had zero awareness of how busy we were around her. One day, she borrowed my phone to make an urgent call. She went to the supply closet and audibly had a long conversation with her mother, again about her cat. When she gave my phone back, I checked the call logs, and no call had been recorded. The most significant incident we had with Tiff was actually the last day she worked for us. No correlation. We only offered orders to go during lockdown, and customers were instructed to call the restaurant and we'd have them pay outside before bringing the meals out to them. It got super busy because most of the restaurants near us were closed completely. During a rush, we lost track of Tiff completely. About 30 minutes later, those of us in front of house collectively realized Tiff was missing. She never told anyone she was leaving and was still clocked in. A handful of us formed some kind of impromptu search party to scout the restaurant premises looking for her, but we don't find her anywhere. She's not in the bathrooms, the closets, the walk-ins, or out back. She's not in the parking lot or the break room. Tiff has disappeared from the restaurant completely. Eventually, one girl offhandedly mentions that she had seen Tiff walk out to her car and drive away. She hadn't even taken off her apron. We started discussing what could have prompted her to walk out like that. A short while later, Tiff returns in a perfect mood and starts working as if she hadn't just disappeared for over 45 minutes. Apparently that day, we had not taken Tiff's phone. Knowing she was not supposed to use our restrooms to watch YouTube, and apparently fearing whatever microbes were on our toilet seats specifically, Tiff had driven down the road to use the public restroom in Domino's instead. She was wearing her apron the entire time. Tiff quit shortly before her shift the next day, as she said she had been hired at Olive Garden. Act like a jerk in the middle seat? Get arrested. After seeing another post about a middle seat jerk, it reminded me of what happened back in 2004, and this is unintentional pro-revenge on my part. This happened on a flight back after dropping my mother-in-law off at home. She was in her 80s and didn't like flying alone, so whenever she visited with my wife and me, I ended up flying down to pick her up and flying back with her to take her home. I liked earning the miles, plus I enjoyed it a lot because I genuinely adored my mother-in-law. Anyway, I had the aisle seat, which I always book, and the guy in the middle seat, who was there before me, refused to move his leg and kept his arm on the armrest. I got in my seat, but he's really pushing back hard. It feels like he's basically trying to take over the entire row. I'm pushing back too, but refuse to continue to this entire flight, even though it's barely a 75-minute flight. As the flight attendant walked by prior to liftoff, I purposely commented loud enough for her to hear, "Dude, stop trying to play footsie with me. I'm not interested." He got all flustered and moved a little bit, though not a lot. Fast forward to just after takeoff. Seatbelt sign is turned off and they're getting ready to serve drinks. Now he's spreading out again, but even more than before. I unhooked my belt and jumped out of my seat and yelled at him to stop touching me. FA and the air marshal rush up to me as quickly as they could to see what's going on, while he's trying to form words. I tell them he keeps rubbing his leg against me and won't stop even after I tell him to. Before this guy could respond, the passenger in the window seat says he's rubbing up against him too. He gets taken out of the middle seat, protesting the whole time. He sat down in a jump seat with the marshal next to him. The FA comes back to me and the guy by the window and offers us a free drink for our inconvenience. We both accept gladly. Free beer is always a good thing. About 20 minutes before the flight is supposed to land, the marshal comes back to me and asks if I wanted to press charges. I seriously thought about doing it, but said no. I'm just glad he's not next to me and pushing up against me. The guy in the window seat said the same, and we figured that was that. After the flight landed and we had exited the plane, I see the middle seat guy in cuffs and a couple of cops talking to the FA. The air marshal saw me standing there and walked over to me. I asked him what happened. She said the guy started calling the flight attendant all kinds of names, and she was pressing charges against him because he did make a threat of harm. He asked me again if I wanted to press charges, and again, I told him no. The guy's already in enough trouble. As I walked away, I looked at the idiot and started laughing. Maybe next time he'll just move. I didn't want him arrested. I just wanted him to stop being a jerk. He's the one who decided to make it worse for himself. My fiance let my snake loose outside, so I kicked her out. I, 27 male, have always been an animal lover. I love snakes, tarantulas, scorpions, lizards, geckos, dogs, and cats. When I moved out of my parents' house and into my townhome, I decided to adopt a ball python. She is very docile and loves to be held. I set her tank up in one of the rooms downstairs. When my fiance, 28 female, and I decided that we were ready to move in together, I slowly introduced her to the snake. She thought the snake was really cool and even held her a few times. A few months ago, her friends came over, and ever since, she's been asking me to find a new home for the snake. I had to travel to another state for work and trusted her to take care of the snake. I was gone for a week, and when I came back, I saw the tank completely gone. I searched all over the house, and it was nowhere to be found. I went outside and checked the wooded area behind the townhome and found the tank. The tank was open and no sign of the snake. When my fiance got home, I showed her the tank and told her to go pack a suitcase and to find another place to stay. Her defense was that I was giving the snake too much attention. Fiance is currently staying with her parents, and they think that I'm overreacting over an animal. Fiance is upset that I won't talk to her or accept her apology. Am I the jerk for kicking my fiance out of the house for letting my snake loose outside? It's illegal to turn animals loose like that in the wild. Not the jerk. Your fiance is messed up. Agreed. The snake very well might not live due to the fact that it's used to being a pet and not used to being outside. This would be like letting a dog run free. OP should break off the engagement. I almost always consider this sub's recommendations to end marriages, break off engagements, go no contact, etc. to be heavy-handed. But this one is messed up on so many levels. The casual animal mistreatment, the fact that she did this to something she knew you love, the jealousy towards a pet, the secret betrayal, and not to mention her family backing her up that all of this is no big deal. OP, your life will be horrible if you marry this messed up person and her messed up family, not the jerk. I think a lot of the breakup recommendations are good, to be honest. My perspective is, if it comes to the point where they are asking anonymous strangers for their opinions about relationships, then there's probably a lot more issues going on too, meaning the relationship probably won't last. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you stay with your fiancé or break up with them? Please let us know.
If Reddit boy ever let one of my pets go, he'd need a new head.
Update my emergency contact info? I don't even work there anymore. This is an interaction I just remembered and figured it might fit here. Years ago, I worked as the administrator for a pair of residential treatment facilities where individuals with long-term mental health issues lived. I was the contact person for a couple city and county agencies and would occasionally get calls about referrals, changes in parole status, and some of my residents, that kind of thing. I left that position in the fall/winter of 2012. Back in 2020 or so, I got a call from one of the partners, and the conversation went like this. Me. Hello? Caller. Hello, this is whoever. Let's call him B. With such and such agency. Is this OP? Me. Please tell me what this is regarding. Caller. I'm calling to update and verify our emergency contact information. We have you listed as the contact person for this facility. Is that right? Me. That's my name, but I haven't worked for that company since 2012. I am not an emergency contact for them anymore, and you will need to remove me from your list. I am not a resource for you or for them. Note, yes, I really did talk like that. 10 years in community mental health/outreach trains you to speak like a computer when necessary so your conversations stay factual and you don't inadvertently agree to anything. Caller. Well, we need some sort of contact information, and yours is the most up-to-date we have. Please spell your first and last name and your email or mailing address so our contact information is correct, and me. Stop right there. I'm not verifying any of my contact information, as I'm not an employee of the company and cannot be used as a resource. Remove any of my information from your list and call the company directly if you need updated emergency contact information. I don't even know who works at those sites any longer. I've been gone for years. Caller. I need you to help me update your contact information. You're being deliberately unhelpful. Me. Yes. Now imagine how unhelpful I'd be if you called me at 10 p.m. on a Friday night. Me, continuing. Again, please remove me from your list of contacts altogether. I no longer work for the company and will not be handling any emergency calls. If you continue to harass me, I'll make my own call to the company and report you for harassment. Caller. Man, I'm just trying to do my job. Me. Yeah, well, you're also trying to get me to do something that is definitely not my job. Please do not call me for emergencies. Goodbye. I ended the call. And that was that. I know it reads like a script or a fake story, but yeah, a decade in community mental health/social work teaches you to talk like an automation sometimes, so you don't inadvertently reveal someone's protected information, and it does help one maintain a really weird level of professionalism and boundaries to keep you from overpromising something to someone. Am I the jerk for serving my brother-in-law's dinner using toy utensils? I, male 17, moved in with my sister after my parents kicked me out. Another story. They said I'll have to temporarily stay here until I get back to normal, which I don't think I will. But anyways, so I moved in with my sister and her husband about a month ago. FYI, she does everything around the house. I started helping here and there, as well as looking after a 2-year-old niece, and now she's 6 months pregnant. Brother-in-law does nothing because he's the breadwinner, as he claims, but in my opinion, he's taken it a bit too far. Example, he'd tell her to start his laundry once he takes it off, put dinner on the table once he's home, get the shower ready, and so on. They fight a lot because my sister is exhausted and burnt out. I usually put my headphones on and mind my own business, but 2 nights ago there was a lot of commotion once he came home, so I went to see what the issue was. Turns out, brother-in-law was complaining about dinner and my sister was too exhausted to get up. I mean, the dinner was already cooked, but he wanted her to put it on a plate for him on the table. I told my sister I'd do it, but instead of using their kitchen utensils, I used my niece's toy utensils, like a toy cup, toy plate, toy fork, and a tiny napkin. And I put the food on the toy plate and the drink in the cup while brother-in-law was in the shower. He then came into the kitchen and sat down and stared at the plate for a few seconds. He then looked at me and asked what the heck this was and whether I was joking. I told him if he wanted to act like a helpless child, then he might as well get treated like one. He began yelling and my sister came inside. He then threw the napkin and stormed off upon saying that I disrespected him and that he'll let my parents know about what I did. My sister saw what I had done and started laughing. I went into my room, but the argument didn't stop. Now he's expecting an apology from me for meddling in his marriage and pulling this crappy stunt on him. I could be the jerk for this, but I was just so mad for my sister and also sick and tired of being sick and tired of the nightly fighting over dinner. Okay, so this is really funny, and he totally had it coming, but we all know you should have stayed way out of this. I get that you were trying to stick up for your sister. Who deserves that? Please accept my softest everyone sucks here. You might have actually made them fight more. People like your brother-in-law often take these things out on people like your sister. Yeah, I mean, I agree that while it was definitely well-deserved, it probably wasn't the smartest thing to do. For OP, since he needs to make sure he still has a place to live, and for the sister for the reasons you said. Although from the post, it does sound like the sister also found it funny and wasn't mad at him for doing that. Who knows, maybe sister is also reconsidering staying married to this jerk. So yeah, agreed with the very soft everyone sucks here. Not the jerk, but honestly, OP, in this situation, it might be better to keep your head low and stop antagonizing him. It sounds like you're surrounded by a really bad situation, but antagonizing this monster is going to affect your sister more than it affects you. You're a guest in their home. If she needs help, you help her. Ignore him at best. You don't have to be a peacekeeper, but don't do the opposite. Everyone sucks here. But what you did was hilarious, and he had it coming. Not the jerk. Also, yikes. Your brother-in-law needs massive help. He sounds like a jerk. Support your sister in this time. Make sure she knows that you're there for her. She needs a divorce ASAP. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk, or is his brother-in-law? Please let us know.
Next time, don't forget to bring him a bottle of milk.
Neighbors involve law enforcement only to be told their own actions count as harassment. My husband, male 43, and I, female 30, recently moved into a house that was previously owned by his parents. The neighbors, who we'll call couple JK, on one side were friends with his folks. Small description of the layout. Our garage door points to the side, so it points towards JK's house. It happens that their bedroom window is facing the garage door. Above our garage door is a small light that illuminates our driveway. Both my property and my neighbors are on a full acre in the country, outside city limits. They have complained about that light since his parents owned the place. They have complained about quite a few things since we've moved in, and for the first bit, we tried to be considerate. The motion light was a big one that they would constantly bring up, saying it was shining in their bedroom window. We had a large pine tree that blocked it for a while on our side of the property line. JK came to us asking to cut down the tree because the overhanging branches were making it difficult to pull vehicles through on their property. In an attempt to be good neighbors, we agreed. So they cut the tree down. But in doing so, they left the trunk, saying it was on us to deal with it. But because the tree was cut down, now they're complaining more about the light. We have not allowed that to make us change it. So they've decided to put up a privacy fence. Okay, sure, it means we have less to deal with from them. This winter, there have been a number of reports of people stealing things from cars, and on top of that, we have chickens. So we set up a Ring camera and motion light that faces the back of the property. The light only comes on when someone is in the driveway or near the chicken coop. But by pointing it at the back of the house, their window is also in that path of the light. It's just in the fringe view of the camera, so I can't imagine that much light is getting in. And with the angle, it's also on our bedroom window, almost directly. It hasn't troubled us at all since we installed it. It had been there for 3 days when we got a text from JK saying challenge accepted and threatening to get the brightest light they can find and point it at our window. A hollow threat. There's no way they could. Now it's been a little over a month. The neighbor was true to his word and put a light on a 12-foot pole with a light on top. I took pictures. It's right up against the fence he built, pointing directly onto our property. He did his best to angle it into our window, but missed. Not that we told him that. It didn't really trouble us. He took it down about 4 days later, never saying a word. Then they called the sheriffs on us. After sending progressively more aggressive and insulting text messages, always from the husband, Jay, they resort to calling law enforcement. The officers showed up, very polite, and we talked with them. Showing them the light in question, they agreed that its placement was fine. We mentioned the text messages, and the officers asked to see them. My husband showed them his phone, and the officers' entire demeanor changed. They apologized for interrupting dinner and said that they would go next door and talk to the neighbors. We got a text the next day from the wife, Kay. It was finally what we wanted. According to her, she knew nothing about her husband's behavior. She had been out of town when he had put up the spite light and made him take it down when she got home. She didn't know about the text messages he had been sending. The sheriffs told them both that my husband and I have enough to make a real harassment case against them. She would like a chance to talk face to face. She spoke with my husband today, and it genuinely seems sorted. Who would have thought them calling the police would actually help us? My neighbor has a giant floodlight shining directly in my bedroom window, so I put up dark plastic, cardboard, and curtains. Now you see, petty little me would have got some sort of mirror film and put it on my window, so whatever they shine at me is reflected right back at them. Am I the jerk for kicking my sister out from every streaming platform I own because she kicked my dad off of her Netflix? English is not my first language. This is not in the US. The streaming devices' prices are really up here. I'll try to keep it short. I'm 25, male. My mom passed about 4 years ago, and one of the things my dad, 65, male, clinged on to ever since was movies. They really enjoyed doing this together, so I guess he took comfort on keeping the activity on his own. At that time, my sister, 32, got a 2-screen Netflix subscription and gave one to my dad so he could use it whenever he wanted. During those 4 years, I was able to get pretty much all of the rest, and since my sister was paying for my dad's Netflix, I thought I gave one of the screens to use, so no biggie. I've been out of town ever since New Year's Eve, and I finally came back home a week ago. I told my dad that we should see a movie together on Netflix or something, but he said that Netflix wasn't working. I found it odd, so I asked what he meant while taking his phone. He said that he asked my sister a few months ago, but she said that it wasn't working, so they'd wait for it to work. I only hummed and tried to log in again, but it didn't let me, so I called my sister asking for the password. She said she couldn't share the account anymore because now that they had my nephew, 2, male, they were using one of the screens for him and another one for her husband. This enraged me. I asked her why she didn't tell me before and why she lied to my dad. She said she didn't have the heart to tell him, and I told her, "But you have the heart to lie to him, don't you?" and hung up. Since then, I've gotten my dad a new Netflix account, and I've changed all my passwords so only my dad and I have them. 2 days ago, she called saying that my brother-in-law wanted to watch Game of Thrones, but the account kicked him out, and I told her, yeah, it was me. She flipped and asked for the password because they can't afford it on their own, and I said, well, I didn't have the heart to tell you, and I hang up the phone again. My brother-in-law texted me calling me petty and a jerk. My dad's oblivious to all of this. My sister called again and asked for the password of one of the platforms because my nephew wants to see Encanto, and I said she has to apologize to my dad first, at least, and she said my nephew's discomfort is on me. Encanto? Bruh, why do you pronounce things so weird sometimes? To get more comments on the video. Oh, it all makes sense now. Am I the jerk for telling my husband to stop disrespecting our surrogate? Me, female 34. My husband, Hunter, male 37, suffered from fertility issues. We recently decided to get a surrogate who's a friend of a friend. We were busy getting everything done legally. We already had a contract in place. My egg was used, so no worries in this regard. Plus, our surrogate is a respectful, kind woman who's been keeping her part of the contract intact. But it's Hunter who's starting to act strange. I've noticed that he's been focusing all of his attention on our surrogate, like skipping work to visit her or get her things she didn't ask for, chat with her all the time on social media, and also constantly offering to do things for her, like drive her places, and sometimes even invite her out or offer to repair stuff for her. She complained to me about this and even told me about things he's been doing that I didn't even know about, like bringing her gifts. I tried speaking to him about what this looks like, but he said that he's doing what he's doing for our son and not for her. Still, I asked that he tone it down and respect her space. He got mad at me and accused me of being jealous of the woman who's carrying his own child and said that this makes me look bad. I said our surrogate was the one who complained about his behavior, and he said that this wasn't true. Apparently, this made him somewhat angry, so I gave him time to cool down a bit. Yesterday, our surrogate called me saying that Hunter came over and told her guests to leave. I asked why, and she said that he wanted to show her the $9,000 car he bought for her. I was shocked. She said she declined the car and asked him to leave, but he started arguing with her about using public transportation and risking our baby's well-being. I was fuming. I called him demanding he'd get home, and he did eventually. Once he got back, I picked up a fight with him and yelled at him, saying that he's been nothing but overstepping, disrespectful, and inappropriate towards our surrogate. Again, he explained the car wasn't for her, but to ensure that the baby is safe. I told him to stop disrespecting her and stop using the baby as an excuse to stomp all over her boundaries. He ranted about how he was just trying to make this work and that I should do the same, if not more. He even accused me of not loving our son as much as he does, but this isn't the way, and putting $9,000 for a car without telling me? He left the house for a while, then came back and refused to speak to me. I might have been hard on him, but he might have been oblivious, so I'm less sure seeing his reaction now. Not the jerk. Reading that creeped me out on a deep level. He sounds like a stalker that's obsessed. Does he not realize that stressing her out by being intense and domineering could cause harm? He needs help and possibly a restraining order. Agreed. It gave me the creeps. A 37-year-old that can't understand how he isn't respecting another person's boundaries is a red flag. Not the jerk. He's actually endangering the successful arrival of your son because not only is he causing stress to your surrogate, he's also making her so uncomfortable that she might seek legal recourse to break the contract. Maybe schedule a formal meeting with lawyers and your surrogate so she can express her needs officially. That might be a way for your husband to actually see the severity of his behavior. Not the jerk. Have him seek therapy before the baby is born. OP. We did get counseling, but for other issues, mainly in our marriage. It clearly wasn't enough. He needs more, and you'll probably want to be with him so he doesn't lie about what's happening or lie about going to begin with. He's clearly untrustworthy when it comes to the situation at hand. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know.
He should have given that $9,000 to me.
My malicious compliance turned my office into a vacation home. This was maybe 6 to 7 years ago. I was the only full-time IT person at a $100+ million per year in sales company. I worked 55 to 65 hours a week between on-site and at home. This is important to remember. I reported to the controller and everything was fine until he quit and they hired the new guy. The new guy was the youngest controller ever hired by our site or any of our sister sites, and man, did he think he had something to prove. First thing he does is pull me into his office and inform me that my team will be the first ones in the building and the last ones to go home. I expect to see you in your office anytime I am in this building. I don't care what you do. Just make sure you are here 7:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. I tried to argue why that was a bad idea. He was having none of it. My response as they collapsed, okay, as if I tried to make it a single syllable. Anyone that worked with me knew they were now done for. I was literally the only guy with the keys to the castle, literally untouchable. Malicious compliance. Met with the OSHA lead to see what appliances I could run in my office safely, no electric kettle. Met with HR and informed them I would be making a spreadsheet of my daily work activities just in case I needed to prove my productivity for any reason in the near future. They thought it was a joke and said okay. Then I set up my second home. Over the course of the next few months, every day I showed up to work at 7:15, went to my office, and worked until 3:30. Then I would start my vacation. I brought in a Raspberry Pi and played games, brought in crock pots of food, and invited key members in to graze and chat. One day I set up a panini press bar and invited all the engineers in for sandwiches, watched movies, listened to music and ebooks, tried to get a dartboard approved by the safety lead, said no before I could finish my request. Basically, I did all the things I did at home at the office. People would stop in after 3:30 p.m. and ask for help, and I would tell them no, explain what I was told, and tell them to stop in at 7:30 tomorrow which was a moot point because the site was an 8:30 to 4:30 place, and if possible, immediately go back to slacking off while they were standing there asking for help. This lasted about 2 months. Then HR called me and we had that meeting. I explained everything, showed my spreadsheet of work, and I included all the times I spent doing zero work and what I was doing to slack off in that time. I was averaging around 35 hours of work a week. Between breaks and lunches, that's normal. They were mad at me, and even more mad at the controller because they knew my productivity tanked, and as a byproduct, so did multiple departments. I was told to go back to doing what I was doing before he started, and I would start reporting to one of the departments that needed me the most instead of finance. Everyone in the office pieced together that their life got harder for those few months because the new guy deemed it so. He ended up relocating shortly after because no one wanted to work with him. I ended up working more normal work weeks, around 45 hours, and everyone was just happy to have me back to help when they needed it. Demand we work overtime for free? Enjoy having no employees. I was reminded of this story due to the recent passing of the hero of this story. Grumpy, you will be missed. I met Grumpy in an addiction recovery program. He volunteered there after they helped him and he became my sponsor. Seeing that I was trying to get my life together, he offered me my first job out of high school. Grumpy was the manager of a store for a company that sold everything you needed to build a house, from cement and bricks to custom-made cupboards. I started as a loader, filling the trucks that were making deliveries. A little background for the company. It plays an important role later. When they started, back in the early 80s, they sold everything you needed to build a brick-and-mortar home wholesale to professionals. During their first expansion, they got a really good reputation for their prices of power tools, custom cupboards, and landscaping, including custom-made garden furniture. The stores were basically big warehouses. In the mid-90s, they opened their doors to the general public, which, accompanied by a rising tint of do-it-yourself, skyrocketed their sales. They brought a second, smaller wave of expansion and the opening of the online store, first only with phone orders and later on with a proper site. When I joined, they were doing a third shift on their business plan. They had cut down on things that weren't big sellers, like bricks and concrete, and were focusing more on the big sellers, custom-made furniture, landscaping, tools, and for some weird reason, plumbing. My first 8 months on the job was a dream. Grumpy was an excellent manager. Having started in the company roughly the same age I was and being promoted through the ranks, had developed a very distinct managerial style. His concept was simple. If my employees are happy, they work better and provide better services, which leads to better sales. That meant that while Grumpy managed one of the inner city stores, meaning medium to small size compared to others, we were fourth in revenue nationwide and first in customer happiness. And then the reason for his nickname stroke. While everyone called him Grumpy, a nickname he was kind of proud of, he was far from it. The reason was he had a medical condition that affected his nerves and had him left with a permanent frown on his face. He had declined promotion due to that condition, knowing the extra stress would make his condition flare up, meaning he wouldn't be as effective as he would like. His medical condition flared up unexpectedly, and Grumpy had to be hospitalized and be on sick leave for a time. HQ decided to not have one of Grumpy's assistants be an acting manager for the duration, but bring in a regional manager to take over the store for the duration. Let's call him Wilhelm. Wilhelm was the exact opposite of Grumpy. He was younger than Grumpy. He was in his late 20s. Grumpy was in his late 30s. He had a business degree and he hadn't worked the floor at all. He was hired from the beginning as an office drone and climbed his way to regional manager. The reason he was put in charge of our store had to do with the change of the business plan of the company. You see, the change of focus had created a lot of empty spaces in the stores. A supermarket chain had approached the company with an offer to rent the empty space, especially for inner city stores. The company had accepted and placed regional managers in key stores to help with integration. The thing is, the supermarket chain had a reputation of being bad employers. That was reinforced by one of our tellers, who had worked for them for 3 years before quitting to join us. Wilhelm didn't help also. His managerial style was based in only one concept: make more money in any way possible. He started by changing our schedule from monthly to weekly, raising the sales targets to unrealistic heights, and always demanded more. In the first 2 weeks, 6 experienced people had left, 4 quit, and 2 were fired, and replaced by young, inexperienced people that were easier to manipulate. And then the integration happened. The floor was the first to feel the problem. The supermarket opened its doors and was understaffed. Wilhelm started sending people over to help for 4 to 6 hours, while also demanding to work their regular shifts. If someone declined, he or she was written up. 2 write-ups in 6 months and you were fired. Then Wilhelm came to lay the law in the loading bay. The loading bay was shared between the 2 stores. Wilhelm declared that we had to first help the 2 guys of the supermarket unload their trucks because their products were perishable, and then start loading our own trucks. That would throw our delivery schedule to the wind. The loading crew worked from 5 a.m. to 1 p.m. We loaded first the trucks that had longer to travel, so they will be ready to leave at 7 at the latest. The company had a next-day delivery policy for a 150-mile radius. What Wilhelm declared meant we couldn't start loading our trucks before 7:30, and they couldn't start their route before 9:30. We said as much, but Wilhelm didn't care. He said we had to do both jobs. When someone inquired about overtime, Wilhelm said no. He said we already made too much money with unsocial hours, 5 to 8, and leaving early, so he wouldn't approve overtime. So, from a nice environment that you wanted to work for, we all started getting miserable. We lost 10 people in the loading crew in a month because of the new rules. The new hires didn't last long. The floor was a mess also, started turning personnel fast. Anyone who is staying is either looking for another job, is afraid of unemployment, or is too young to know better. The sales had a very small decline, but customer happiness is plummeting fast. After almost 6 months, all the old guard that was left was ready to quit. But our savior came back. Almost 6 months from the day he was hospitalized, Grumpy walks into the store to claim his rightful position. He isn't a knight in shining armor, riding a pure white horse, carrying a legendary sword. He's in normal attire, slightly limping and holding a cane. We have a welcome back party and have a small glimmer of hope now that he's back. We are informed that Grumpy will be on light duty for 2 weeks before he becomes the manager again. Despite Grumpy being back, Wilhelm still remains the regional manager, which means he outranks Grumpy and will make it very clear in private meetings with all of us. If he caught us complaining to Grumpy, we were as good as gone. Still, a few of us are planning to have a meeting with Grumpy after the weeks, letting him get his sea legs back. But another department had other ideas. During his reign of terror, the only department that Wilhelm couldn't control was the workshop. He knew that if he treated them as bad as he did to us, they would quit, and the sales would go from a small decline to bottom of the barrel real quick. As I said, custom-made furniture was the #1 seller. So the head carpenter has a meeting with Grumpy on his second day talking about the future of the workshop. In reality, the guy spilled the beans on Wilhelm. With the pretext of catching up with the changes, Grumpy has meetings with everyone, learning what Wilhelm has done and why we had so many new staff. You could feel he was getting angrier with every meeting. He had also had an eye-opening meeting with the manager of the supermarket. Finally, the time had come that he is the manager again. The revenge. On his first day back as manager, Grumpy notifies everyone of a mandatory meeting after the store is closed. He has a solution. So gather in the store after closing hours, and Grumpy lays out the plan. For the next couple of days, nobody except him is coming to the store. If anyone calls us, we should direct them to him, which we did when we started getting calls about the store being closed. Grumpy's answer to the headquarters was simple. The staff was working on a second job during their shifts, which is a breach of contract, so I had to fire them all and find new staff. That caught headquarters' attention, because nothing of that sort was reported in the last 6 months. They asked Grumpy for evidence, which he happily provided with our written testimonies, which brought a crapstorm on Wilhelm. You see, Wilhelm had an arrangement with the supermarket manager. He got a kickback from our unpaid labor for the supermarket, and the manager offered the same thing to Grumpy. He also included that Wilhelm regularly declined to sign overtime, which meant that if any one of us went to the labor department, the company would get a really huge fine. The aftermath. Wilhelm quickly got fired. We all received calls to interview with the company for an open position. We all received severance pay for our firing, plus most of the unpaid overtime, about 80% of it. Almost all of us went back to work with a small pay raise based on experience. The company took a long, hard look at the supermarket chain and distanced themselves from them. They stayed until their lease was over, but no shared employees anymore, and a lot of theirs jumped ship to our side. Next time Grumpy had to take time off, one of his assistants took over. 2 did a stellar job, leading to being promoted to managers in other stores. Grumpy brought back his usual managerial style, leading again to a rise of sales and customer happiness. I left the job 3 years later for a better paying position, but I still remember Grumpy as one of the best managers I ever had. My mother-in-law stole my cat, so I called the cops on her. I'm 20, female, and my mother-in-law, who's 63, can be very overdramatic when I'm involved in certain things. She's a bit of a control freak about everything regarding my partner, male 21. My partner is a bit naive when it comes to the real world, as she has sheltered him for most of it. He moved out last year for school, and she's been trying to ruin his life over the phone. But he has asked chiefly for advice from me since she doesn't offer the best advice. Last year, he lost his grandmother to Alzheimer's. She left behind a cat that we took in and affectionately named Noodle. We have had her for almost a year now. Now to the actual story. My partner and I went on vacation for spring break, and since none of our friends could look after her, we left Noodle by herself for a few days. She had bird videos, more than enough food, and more than enough water. She has been left alone for a lot longer by my partner's parents and aunt, who she had lived with before. So, the day that we were supposed to come home from our trip, we had our car broken into, and they stole my partner's camera and my house and car keys, as well as my ID. We then spent the day trying to find our belongings, and the entire time his mom, my mother-in-law, was calling us and complaining about us leaving the cat. When we told her about the break-in and theft, neither of his parents seemed to care that we felt as violated as we did. All they cared about was us going back to our cat. Finally, as we were giving up our search, he got another call from his mom. She was angry and started calling us cruel to leave Noodle for 3 days. We got mad and asked her why she cared more about a cat who doesn't even really care that we are gone than her kid who had his property stolen and their daughter-in-law who had her house and car keys stolen. She hung up on us after saying she was gonna come to get the cat. I texted her and said that if I got back home and my cat was gone, I'd call the cops. I didn't get a reply. Well, we got home, and lo and behold, our cat is gone, as well as her food bowl and all the things we bought her. I called my mother-in-law and asked if she had Noodle. I didn't even need an answer from her, as I could hear my cat yowling. I told her if she didn't bring her back, I would call the cops. She hung up on me. Well, I called the cops. They went to her house and got my cat back, as well as charged her with theft. I'm getting messages from his family saying that I took it too far and that I should have just gone and gotten the cat. But I know this woman. She would have called the cops on me if I had gone to her house. But the reason I may be the jerk is that she may face jail time if I press charges, and she suffers from mental illness. Not the jerk. She broke your boundaries and is paying the consequences. She messed around and found out. I'm assuming your partner is on your side? OP. Honestly, I think he's just happy to have our cat back. He's a little upset about the charges. Everyone sucks here. You say you leave your cat alone for longer than 3 days with no one to watch her when you could just hire a professional or bring her to a cat boarding facility where she will be cared for. Leaving an animal alone with no one to check up or care for her is just negligent. It would be one thing if someone came by once a day, but you just say Noodle is left alone. Your mother-in-law should not have stolen the cat, but it's not up to you to police her feelings either. She is allowed to care about the welfare of a sentient animal over stolen, non-sentient stuff. Change your locks and keys so your mother-in-law can't just come into your house, but also take better care of your cat. Hire a professional pet sitter or someone to at least check up on Noodle once a day, rather than just leaving her alone for days on end. OP. We couldn't afford to board her, but we did have a friend come in and check on her when we realized we would be gone longer than anticipated. Don't feel bad. A few days is totally fine for cats. I have automatic feeders and fountains and robot litter boxes, plus some pet cams to see how they're doing, and I do this pretty often with my 2 cats. I've gone 5 days before and felt bad because they didn't get snuggles in that time, but I watched the cams almost constantly and they just napped and ate anyway. Dealing with the locker thief in high school. This was back in the early 2000s, probably 2003 to 2004 school year. Throughout the entire year, there was a crime wave of people having their things stolen out of their locked lockers. Not everyone, but enough that everyone knew someone who it happened to. The school's only defense about this was that it was our fault for sharing locker combos with our friends. They also charged us every time we had to get the combination changed on a locker, like after a theft for instance, because it was assumed to be our fault. Well, I had my graphing calculator taken out of my locker. I also never gave out my combination to anyone, mostly because my friends were jerks and we pulled crap on each other all the time. So I was out $150 for the calculator and another $150 to change the combination, getting a locksmith to change out the lock. This is 2003 money, so it's a bit more than now. To anyone who has ever had to buy a TI-86 in 2003 or 2004, you'll know how much the things cost. Well, my dad was drinking buddies with one of the county detectives. I'll call him Detective Buddy and/or Uncle Buddy. He went in to talk to the school about these thefts going on, so he could get the security camera for the day my calculator went missing and got completely brushed off, as it was a non-existent problem, and he must have given out his locker combination. The principal told him he would need a warrant to get the camera footage. Then when he got the warrant, the school fought the warrant in court, citing student privacy. Cue the pro-revenge. Detective Buddy shows up at our house with a laptop and a laptop bag. He's like, "Throw this in your locker and tell everyone you know about your brand new laptop." Okay, sure, Uncle Buddy. 3 days later, I show up at my locker between classes and the laptop is gone. The bag too, nowhere to be seen, as is a 24-ounce bottle of Coke and possibly some pens. I take my phone out and text him that the laptop got taken. Stand by for the crab show. Oh, and you reported the theft to the police, FYI. He replies back. Okay, I replied, confused. I got about the rest of my day and I don't hear anything back. The following morning, Detective Buddy comes to the school with 3 uniformed officers and pulls a student, Dave, out of class, as well as his mom, who works in the front office. The principal is upset. I don't actually hear the cops, but the principal is upset to no end that he had the audacity to accuse them of theft, and he couldn't just take them out of his school, etc., etc. Well, turns out there was a tracker in the laptop bag, and Uncle Buddy got a warrant to search a particular house. The laptop had a value of over $1,000, making it a felony. The next afternoon, he set up a tent with a table just outside of school grounds. He also had a banner across the top, "If you had something stolen from your locker, see me." By the next morning, Dave and his mom made the paper. Apparently, Dave allegedly used his mom's login information to get onto the school network and get the locker combinations for basically everyone. Then he just opened random lockers looking for valuables to steal, if he didn't get info of a specific locker to steal from. When he set up the stand to get more people reporting thefts, he racked up an astounding number of charges. Each locker counted as a separate misdemeanor unless the stolen object was worth more than $1,000, in which case it was a felony. In less than a week, Uncle Buddy opened and broke an investigation, and they charged Dave and his mom with 9 felonies and 35 misdemeanor charges. When I finally got the story from Buddy, he explained what the situation was. He had me stash a brand new laptop that had a GPS tracking unit stuck in it in my locker, then get it stolen deliberately, and then he got a warrant to search the property it had been taken to. Now, the fun thing to stress is that the laptop was over $1,000 value, pushing the theft from a misdemeanor into felony level. There was also another 8 felony charges, stuff like jewelry that was taken from other people's lockers and recovered. So any of the locker break-ins that amounted to over $1,000 stolen was a felony charge, and less than $1,000 was a misdemeanor charge. Cool thing was that because the calculator and the laptop were separate days, and the combination changed between the days, he caught a felony and a misdemeanor charge off me alone. The 9 felony thefts ended up in $12,000 range total, and the 35 misdemeanor charges were somewhere in the range of $3,000 total in value. Now, that's an awful lot of stuff stolen, but I need to stress that this is only what was proven stolen. Like, this is what they caught him with in his possession and that they could trace back to someone. They also didn't let them plead to anything. It was Podunkville's highest profile crime in years, and without a doubt, one of the worst crime sprees the county had seen in decades. Next up on the revenge. Everyone who had been charged $150 to get their locker combinations changed sued the school district in a class action lawsuit. The justification was that the school did nothing to investigate the 44 proven and more than likely 200+ cases of locker theft, and then charged money to get the locker combinations changed. There were 218 people in the class, and in total, everyone got $85 after attorney's fees. The principal also lost his job for being a bonehead and not bothering to attempt to deal with a massive problem that was reported to him going on at the school. The fun thing I need to point out is that the school brought in a locksmith to change out the locks. That's why they justified charging $150. Well, the school already paid the $150 a locker, but they also had to return $100 per locker, meaning that they were out $21,800 plus their legal fees for that class action suit. Next comes the criminal trial and the fallout. The prosecutor's deal was 10 years in prison, 5 in juvie and 5 in adult prison, for Dave and 15 for Dave's mom. Well, they refused that deal and it went to trial. Dave got 1 year in prison for each felony, the state minimum, and 1 month probation for each misdemeanor. So 9 years plus 35 months of probation. His mom received 18 years of jail and 6 years probation. Having attended much of the best parts of the trial, I will say this. They had Dave on camera entering 20 plus lockers, and they had them in possession of stolen goods for every single charge they made against them. The judge was also not amused that there were likely other reported crimes that they got away with because they couldn't prove it or they weren't reported. Dave's mom got it worse. That was a fun sentencing to show up for. But the most important thing is that I got my graphing calculator back. It had my name engraved inside the battery compartment. I still have it, as well as a cool story to tell. Ex-husband backed out on our agreement really ended up costing him. My ex-husband and I had a great divorce. Even though he cheated on me after 12 years and 2 kids under 4, I really wanted to do things differently than my parents did during their divorce. I never said anything negative about him and tried very hard to defend him when the kids got upset with him. I extended invitations to the woman he left me for so she would not feel uncomfortable with me and we became friends. She was basically their stepmom, so why not include her on everything? On holidays, we all had one big dinner. He and her and me and my boyfriend. This made everyone comfortable and the kids never had to choose one side or the other as we were all on the same page. It was such a great relationship that when I had back surgery, I recovered at his house and she cooked for me. He and I were coaches for the kids' basketball and baseball teams, and I helped at their wedding 13 years later. This was not easy for me as he moved to another state to raise her kids, leaving me to raise our sons on my own. She quit her job when they got together, and I had to return to work to support my kids. But I needed to keep the resentment and bitterness away from my kids. All of this sets the tone for the divorce, but when he initially left, I spoke to a lawyer and got a separation agreement that was really great for me. He asked that I not take half of his retirement, but instead he would pay this amount of money in child support and an additional amount in alimony, because he was making a lot of money and I was a stay-at-home mom with a country club membership. Yuck, I hated saying that, but it was only to set the scene. Normally, alimony ends after 5 years, but because I didn't get half of the 401k, the only condition on ending it was it would end on my remarriage or me passing. He agreed with all of it. The thing is, when he left me to move down to where she lived, he left his cushy job and took this promising, but not delivering, position that really did him over financially. But he never went back to the lawyer to get child support or alimony reduced. Instead, he borrowed from his mother. When I discovered he was mooching off of her, I suggested to her that she stop paying for him when he finally got back on his feet. She never would do that and continued paying for his life and her to be a stay-at-home mom, even co-signing for a second home for him when he finally moved back to raise his kids. Hers had graduated and lived in his old house. Ours were in high school. He did come to me and ask if I would accept regular child support and half of the alimony. Then later, when he was really earning money, he would pick back up on the past due amount. Not wanting to make waves in an otherwise great divorce, I said yes and kept track each month of what was owed in a shared spreadsheet with him so he could see how far in debt he was getting each month. He ended up owing me $1,000 per month times 10 years, but he said when the kids aged out of child support, he would continue to pay the same amount to make up for the alimony, which totaled $120,000. When my daughter aged out, he continued to pay the same amount, putting a small dent in what he owed for 3 years. Then, as soon as my son aged out, 2 weeks after he joined the Marines, he called me and told me there was no way he was going to continue paying me for the next amount of years, and I could take him to court if I wanted to, but there is no way he would pay me another cent. This completely blew my mind, as we had such a fantastic relationship, and it came out of nowhere. I was completely freaked out, but I took his advice. I contacted an attorney, I sent all his calls to voicemail, per my attorney's advice, and I took him to court. The best thing was, prior to the hearing, my attorney put a lien on both homes he had, so he could not change ownership to his mom or wife prior to the court hearing. I still have the phone call recording when he realized this and the horrible names he called me for doing that. Since I had kept such immaculate records from the day he changed payments and he was aware of his debt rising each month, it was a slam dunk for my attorney. Instead of making small payments for a few years, he had 30 days to pay me $120,000 in full. Unfortunately, the kids now have to choose which parent they visit on holidays, but that was not my fault. I was willing to continue, as is, and not put any strain on the family relationship. And for those who are wondering, yes, he did cheat on her 2 times before they got married, but she had quit her job when they got together because she found a sugar daddy and had nothing to fall back on and nowhere to go, so she stayed with him. Since we were friends, she shared this info with me, as I would understand what she was going through. Edit. I got my money on day 29. No other payments will be made. Edit 2. I think the reason he went crazy on me was his mother refused to pay anymore when my son aged out, but I explained that he owed a ton of back pay. That's when he said, "If you think I'm making payments to you forever, you're nuts." She had been paying his child support for 10 years because he never went back to a great paying job, even though he could have. Yes, I went to work after separation and have a great career, but my income was still 1/4 of his when we were together because we moved every 3 years for his career. He wanted me to stay at home when the kids were born. Thanks for the awards and for the mean DMs. I'm okay with you calling me names because you don't matter to me at all. Am I the jerk for demanding my son take his daughter on his family trip to Disneyland? I got pregnant and had my son, Julius, who's 28 now, about a month after my 18th birthday. I tried to do my best for him and he got into a good engineering school, but at 19, he got his then girlfriend, Isa, pregnant, and they had Annabella together. I've been the one who has mostly raised her. Isa had to return to her home country, but her and Annabelle spend July together and FaceTime every night. Julius got married to his girlfriend, Katja, after graduation, and they have 2 wonderful boys together. Annabella lives with me and not with them. The thing is, Julius never spends any time with Annabella. He doesn't even call her to say goodnight, but she loves him so much. It's like once a month he'll show up with a box full of toys, spend a day with her, and then go back to his family. It hurts her so much that he doesn't spend time with her because he's her hero. I'm just grandma. And no, he doesn't act this way because of his wife. Katja would love to have Annabella move in with them. She once brought up the idea, and she went on about all the things they could do together. She would love to be her stepmom, calls her princess, sweetie, and so many nice nicknames. The only reason they haven't is because Julius has said she should stay with me. A few days ago, Julius told me that he and Katja were planning a trip to Disneyland in August. I told him that Annabella would be so excited and he should tell her on her birthday, and he just blankly told me she's not coming and the trip is for his boys. I made it clear to him that he needed to bring her on the trip, and he just called me a jerk, which he's never done before, for trying to control him. I admit that I was a bit controlling in my reaction, but I don't think I went that far. So he just pawned his kid off on you for eternity? Does he send you child support? Does he make any actual effort to be a father to his daughter? Not the jerk. These are great questions. I'm wondering if he does. If not, he's worse than we all already think. OP says he shows up once a month with a box of toys, so I'm inclined to think that he doesn't. It's wonderful that OP is selflessly providing for Annabella, but he needs to step up as her father and actually contribute, not the jerk. I think Grandma may need to cut her son out entirely. She can't force him to want to be a good parent, but she can protect her granddaughter. This is what I came here to say. He needs to sign all rights away or something. Her stepmother cares more for her than he does. He's gonna do this crap, and eventually it's going to affect his daughter's relationship with her brothers. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her son? Please let us know. My heart breaks for that girl. Am I the jerk for being angry at my stepdaughter? I, 32 female, married my husband, 39 male, almost a year and a half ago. He's a pretty successful man, so he has provided everything his 21-year-old daughter, my stepdaughter, ever wanted. I don't want to call her spoiled, but she didn't work a job until she was 19 and has her tuition completely paid for by my husband and his ex. She apparently makes up for it by supposedly being smart and going to a good college. The reason that I'm writing this is because she is graduating this summer and we wanted to make a whole trip out of it. After my husband told her the plans, stepdaughter made it very clear that she does not want me to be at her graduation and blames it on not having enough tickets. When my husband brought up that she has a lot of tickets, she said that her last one is going to her best friend's mom. But I think it's unfair, and she's just making up excuses at this point. When my husband suggested that dinner might be a great way to include me, she then explains that she already made dinner reservations for a large party and she cannot add more people. My husband thinks that it might not be the best idea for me to go to her graduation, but I really wanted to go through with this trip. All of my husband's friends and family talk so highly of stepdaughter, and I cannot find out why. Stepdaughter has slandered my job. I would try to explain to her that I did not have a lot of opportunities growing up, and she would then talk about how her mother is so successful despite all that she has been through. She tells my husband that he's gonna go broke because he has to support me as if he isn't supporting her through college. I've had to deal with other people constantly celebrating her and her accomplishments, and I've had enough. Am I the jerk for being annoyed that I can't go on the trip with my husband? Edit. He is well off, but not wealthy, and him and his ex both provide for her the same. That is why I was confused about her saying he was going broke while supporting me. Edit. He had his daughter at 18 or 19 and was with his ex until 4 to 5 years ago. I was not with him during his previous marriage, and he dated someone else before me. Edit. I'm going to answer some questions. I dated my husband for a little over a year before we tied the knot. I wanted to go to her graduation because it's important to my husband, and we planned the entire trip and booked a hotel. Never did I state that I wanted my husband to cut off stepdaughter or choose me over her. One of the things I admired about him was how he spoke of his stepdaughter before I met her. I could tell he loved her so much, and she was his greatest achievement. I understand it is her day, but I wanted to celebrate with my husband because I know it's a big day for him to celebrate as well. He has worked hard to give that young lady a good life, and it is paying off. I do not care for or want to take his money. I was trying to state my frustrations because I feel as if I'm being punished for simply not being her mother. She doesn't want to know me. Okay, but I find it unfair for myself and my husband. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her stepdaughter? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for insulting my mother-in-law after she made comments about me not wanting kids? I, 25 female, have 4 older siblings. Seeing my parents regret having kids and struggle financially and physically, I realized at a young age I didn't want kids. I love them, and spoiling my nieces and nephews is what keeps me alive, but I've never wanted any of my own. I've worked my whole life set on the one career, so why would I give it up for 18 years of regret? My husband doesn't want kids either, but too loves our nieces and nephews. Well, my mother-in-law is a strong believer that he should be the breadwinner and I should be a stay-at-home mother. She's very old-fashioned, and so is my husband's sister. My mother-in-law doesn't have any respect for me after finding out that I will not be having kids. Every time I see her, she makes comments like, "At your age, I already had this many kids," or "What are you even doing with your life with no kids?" It upsets me, but my husband says to just ignore her, and we only have to see her at family events. Now, here comes the bad part. My father-in-law never wanted kids, but my mother-in-law baby-trapped him, and when my husband was 10, they divorced. Mother-in-law was depressed for a very long time and is still in love with him. The other day, me and my husband were invited to a small family get-together, and of course, we went. Everything went well, and I was having fun. I picked up my husband's cousin, who was only 6, and started playing with her. Mother-in-law took notice of this and walked over to me and said, "See, isn't that easy? Now you just have to have your own kids and do this. I mean, what else could you possibly be doing with your life? Stop slacking off." This ticked me off. In the moment, I just said, "Oh, I don't want kids." Hey, kinda like father-in-law. Who knows? Maybe my marriage will work out unlike yours because you're too selfish to take others' feelings and wants into account. Mother-in-law stood there, absolutely dumbfounded, before bursting into tears. Everyone immediately rushed over, and when mother-in-law told them, some laughed and some were mad. I felt so awful, I wished I had never said it. My husband dragged me to the car and said that although she had it coming, I could have found something else to say instead of absolutely tearing into her like that. I've received a few messages saying the same thing, but mostly calling me messed up. So, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. That was long overdue, and if your husband had handled his mom sooner and not let it go on for so long, it all could have been avoided. Exactly. Just ignore it is the biggest cop-out from husband. Not the jerk. It's always the worst when people constantly degrade and belittle others are absolutely besides themselves when someone has the audacity to be honest with them. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or mother-in-law? Please let us know.
Mother-in-law had it coming. I hope she learns to respect other people's decisions from now on.
Am I the jerk for expecting my husband's truck to be a shared resource? I, female 31, have been with my husband, male 31, for 10 years. We've lived together for most of that time and have a kid and a dog together. This particular issue started a few months ago when he bought a new truck. The night before he had to pick it up, about a 1-hour drive, I asked him to take the dog out to go to the bathroom. He refused, saying the dog is mine and therefore my responsibility, not his. Technically, the dog is an ESA for me, and when we got her, we agreed that I would do the majority of the care for her. This has held true, and this was the first time in over 2 weeks I had asked him to do any of the caretaking for her. I told him that if he couldn't do something as simple as take the dog out to go to the bathroom for me, I wouldn't be spending my day off driving him to get his truck. The next morning, he asked me to drive him, and I told him no, reminding him of our argument the night before. He ended up Ubering there, which cost $100+. A few weeks ago, I asked for his help picking up a mattress as my vehicle is a small car. He refused unless I contribute $70 a month towards his truck payment. His reasoning was that A, since I'm benefiting from the truck, I should be helping to pay for it, and B, I didn't drive him to pick up the truck, so he doesn't want to use it to help me. We had a pretty big fight about this, and I argued that as his wife, I should have access to his resources, obviously within reason, without having to contribute to that specific resource financially. I eventually apologized for not taking him to pick up the truck, and he agreed that he would help me with things like this in the future. A few days later, he helped me deliver a desk I was selling about 5 minutes away. After the fact, he asked for half of the money I had earned from selling the desk. I refused because, again, I feel that his truck is a shared resource, and he's my husband, not a contracted delivery driver. He seemed annoyed by this, but didn't push it. Today, I asked for his help picking up a pull-out couch for our guest room. He said no. When I asked him why, he said, "Because I don't like to help you." He then further explained, "You won't pay for part of the truck payment, and you didn't give me some sort of money from your desk, so I don't really want to use my truck to help you." I just said, "Okay," and walked away. I'm really confused and unsure here. I mean, obviously, I feel like it's fair that he would use his truck to help me every once in a while, just like I use my resources to help him when I can. To me, that's part of being in a committed relationship with someone, and how our relationship has operated up until this ongoing issue with the truck. But am I the jerk for not paying part of the truck payment? For context, he had planned to pay the whole payment himself until he, and I quote, realized I would benefit from it so much, and that it seemed unfair to him. Y'all need marriage counseling. Do they even like each other? It doesn't seem like it. Imagine this is your marriage. I'm so confused. They're so toxic. I can't imagine my fiance ever acting like this. But then again, mine drives all over the city to get my favorite soup and all kinds of meds when I'm sick and doesn't charge me for it like I'm sure this dude would. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know.
If Reddit boy didn't use his truck to help me, he'd need a new head.
Helping out doesn't mean giving you $100,000. Disclaimer: all names have been changed. This story occurs on my wife's side of the family, so I have a second row seat rather than a front row seat for most of this. My wife's Aunt Louise is a great lady. She and her husband lived in the San Francisco Bay Area and bought their home in the late 1970s. After her husband passed a few years ago, she sold her home for over $1 million and moved back to live closer to her family where she grew up, farming areas in Southern California. She's in her late 60s. Aunt Louise has 3 kids, who are all now in their 40s. The 2 oldest are nice, normal people. Her youngest, Kay, is a real piece of work. She meets all the criteria for a psychological diagnosis of narcissism. This is just one of literally dozens of stories I could tell. First, some backstory about Kay's husband, Pedro. He was a good provider. About 10 years ago, things began going well and began making pretty good money. To Kay, however, higher income meant more spending, and soon she was buying a new car every 2 years. They went on cruises. She had all the latest and greatest gadgets. As the old MTV tagline used to go, too much is never enough. To augment her lifestyle, she would routinely run to her mom, Aunt Louise, with a sob story or another. We don't know about the true figure, but I've heard rumors that Aunt Louise has given her more than $20,000 over the past few years. Kay and Pedro managed to keep their heads above water, but when lockdown hit and the state of California ordered economic shutdown, money became tight. Then in October, the company went out of business. He found another job, but was essentially starting his career over. Naturally, they'd begun fighting about money, and 2 weeks ago, it comes to a head. After hearing the blasphemous word "no" one time too many, Kay announces she's getting a divorce. Being California, she naturally expected the courts were going to give her one last payday from this poor guy: her car, their house, his 401k, and generous alimony. However, in her greed, she forgot that Pedro had kept draining his 401k to pay off credit cards, and all those papers about the house she was signing every couple of years was to refinance their house to pay off more credit cards, so there's almost no equity. And with having to start his career over, alimony wasn't going to be that great. So Kay does what she always does, goes running to her mother, Aunt Louise. Aunt Louise is naturally sympathetic and urges Kay to try and reconcile, but failing that, she might be able to help her out. Literally 2 hours later, Kay texts Aunt Louise with a photo of a pricey condo and asks for $100,000 to cover her down payment and costs to furnish it. Aunt Louise naturally pushes back, telling Kay that helping out didn't mean $100,000. She had meant letting Kay live with her while she got back on her feet, writing a check for a security deposit and first month's rent, and maybe helping with some car payments. At this point, Kay totally flips out. Here are the things my wife said were direct quotes. I'm getting these third hand, so they might be slightly off.
I can't believe my own mother would be so selfish. What difference does $100,000 make? You're not going to spend it all anyway.
Meaning before Aunt Louise passes.
Just sell some stocks or something.
Aunt Louise, fortunately, does have someone who manages her money, but she stays on a strict allowance. After Aunt Louise held out, Kay had begun polluting Facebook with passive-aggressive messages about finding out people's true colors. My wife is actually hoping she calls to ask for help, specifically so that she can let her have it. My Karen daughter demands I buy her boyfriend a new Tesla. I, 45 male, have a son, Logan, who's 21, and a daughter, Emily, who's 22. My ex consistently fought for custody, and she won. Logan and I were very close, but Emily wanted nothing to do with me. I did purchase Logan and Emily their first car when they turned 18. Logan still drives the car today. Emily ended up selling the car after a year and used the money for college. My ex passed last year, and Logan moved in with me. Emily moved in with her current boyfriend and has been firm on not wanting me in her life. Her boyfriend got into an accident recently, and Emily reached out to me asking if I could help her with purchasing a car. I did some research and sent her some cars that were for sale and decently priced. She reached back out saying that she wanted a brand new Tesla. I looked at the Tesla pricing and the model was over the amount that I wanted to spend. I told her that I could not help her with purchasing the Tesla, and she got angry, saying that her boyfriend wanted the car and she didn't have the money. I again told her that I would be willing to help her purchase another car that was in the budget. She went back to not contacting me. Am I the jerk for not buying my daughter's boyfriend a car? This is really your question? You owe neither her nor her boyfriend, especially not her boyfriend, a car. You did it once, and she made her perfectly reasonable, honestly choice. You don't exist just to be her Miss Moneypenny, not the jerk. Emily moved in with her current boyfriend and has been firm on not wanting you in her life. Emily reached out to you asking if you could help her with purchasing a car, not the jerk. Tell Emily she can buy her own car. She only called you when she needed something. She's selfish and doesn't even care about you. Not the jerk. It really sucks that she only wanted to have contact with you in order to try and get something from you. It's extremely generous of you to even offer to help her boyfriend out like that. Sister-in-law and niece destroyed my plants, so I banned them from my house. Years ago, I really got into houseplants and started to collect them. Over the years, I've had up to 70, but whittled my collection down to about 35, just the ones I really love. My niece, Jenny, who's 14, has developed an interest in plants and will come over and we will talk about them, and she helps with propagation and repotting. I had to go out of town for 2 weeks to take care of some work stuff, so I asked sister-in-law and Jenny if they could plant sit for me. I told Jenny I would pay, but also give her a few cuttings as a trade-off. They agreed, and when they came over, I gave a tour and explained the care needed, and also showed off a few prized plants. Sister-in-law asked how much a few of them ran me, and I did share. This didn't seem weird because the family knows, and I've gotten some plants as gifts. Well, I returned from my trip and was horrified. They watered and gave the right amount of light, but they also decided to give a lot of my plants haircuts. Big ones. My prized Cebu blue mother plant was destroyed. The climbing one too. My mandula had been done the same. My golden that I trained up the stairwell. My string of pearls, hearts, and ruby necklace, all destroyed. My silver stripe. The worst was that my pink princess Philo had been reduced to 2 leaves, and my albo is down to 3. I don't even think they got nodes necessarily. These plants are expensive and prized. I basically broke down, and when they came to meet me to give me back my key, I screamed and screamed at them. Jenny started crying, saying I said I would give her cuttings, so she thought it was okay. I screamed at her to go home and get me what she stole from me and bring it back now, because she knew I didn't mean she could destroy my plants. Sister-in-law got between us and said, "What's done is done." I said, "No way, you're returning everything." Jenny said, "Mom already sold most of them on Marketplace." I lost it and just screamed and screamed at them until Jenny was crying and her mom got in my face and told me I was having a tantrum over plants. I told her to get out of my house and don't ever come anywhere near me or my home again. I called my brother, sister-in-law's husband, and he was shocked and said that they told him I said it was all okay. He brought me the stuff she hadn't sold yet and apologized. I told him I never ever want either of them in the same room as me again. They're horrible, awful, irredeemable people, and I hope they both get karma for what they've done. He told me he gets that I'm upset, but I'm taking it too far, and that family means not holding grudges. I told him to leave, and I cried for the rest of the day. I'm posting because I need to know if my edict is over the top and if I'm overreacting. So, am I the jerk for telling them that they are no longer welcome in my home and not even wanting them in the same room? Not the jerk. This wasn't a misunderstanding. Your sister-in-law knew exactly what she was doing and making a profit of it. I'm surprised your brother didn't realize something was amiss. OP. He said that he noticed they were carrying a lot back home after coming over, but my niece said Auntie said it was okay, over and over. I would demand 100% of their profits too, not just what they haven't sold. Tell your brother that it is the only way you'd even think about healing the relationship with your niece in the future. His wife should remain nothing to you. Not the jerk. The part about being sold already. This was planned. This was about money. A 14-year-old knows better than to steal someone's hard work and sell it. As a plant lover myself, I'm so sorry this happened to you. It must have been horrible. Not the jerk. Some of those plants can cost or bring in several $100s. I have lots of plants as well. Most were under $30. If anyone cut them up, I would freak out. I've put so much care and time into them that it would feel disrespectful. It's a form of stealing. Also, I understand my plants, and if or when they are ready to propagate and how to do so without causing issues to them. I would kick anyone out who messed with my plants. I would never let them back in. Well, what do you think? Did OP overreact or not? Please let us know.
If Reddit boy touched my plans, he'd need a new head.
I just wanted a drill, not a police report. Alright, so a little backstory. This happened about 4 months ago. I had just finished an 11-hour shift and needed to stop at Home Depot to get a new drill. I just wanted to run in, buy it, run out, and get home. Of course, it wasn't that easy. I had just gotten to the drills and was looking over the options in my price range when I hear it. Excuse me, where are the wax toilet rings? There are a few other people in the area, so I ignore it, assuming there's an employee nearby. It's important to add, as I work in traffic control and just got off the job site, I'm wearing high-visibility pants, a high-visibility vest shirt that says company name traffic control on the back, a radio with a shoulder mic, and I have a traffic control technician certification card displayed on my vest. The employees here wear orange aprons and normal clothes. Hello? Do you want to do your job or just stand there looking at tools? At this point, I glanced around to see what was going on. I assumed some customer was berating an employee, which happens a lot at this location, unfortunately. I was surprised, however, to see some 30-year-old guy in a white button-down shirt and tie looking at me like I'm stupid. Can I help you? I said, still not sure of the situation, but that seemed to tick him off. Yes, you. Can you tell me where the darn wax rings are? He shouted. At this point, it clicked in my head what was going on. I'm sorry, sir, I started saying. I don't want to hear anything but an aisle number, he yelled, interrupting me and drawing the attention of a few other shoppers. Honestly, how did you get this job being so stupid? I tried again. I don't work. He cuts me off again. Oh my god, why is this so hard? Where are the wax rings? Now, I don't know why, but I got an idea in my head that I thought would be amusing, and at the very least might get him away from me. I pointed behind him at a random aisle where wax rings almost certainly weren't in and said, "It's right there." Finally, how stupid can you be? He yelled, huffing and storming off. I thought that was the end of it. I figured he'd realize they're not in that aisle and then find an actual employee to ask. Nope. He came right back and started yelling that I don't even know how to do my job and that his best friend is the district manager and he'll have my job. During his yelling, I noticed a few shoppers staring at us. I just raised my hand, pointed to the same aisle as before and said, "They're right there. Look, can't you see them? How stupid can you be?" I retorted, taking glee and throwing the last part back at him. But he wasn't amused. He smacked my hand down and shoved me, yelling something about stupid punk teenagers. That was a bad idea. I'm not a skilled fighter or super strong or anything, but I know when I can take someone. This guy clearly didn't. I bopped him once in the nose and he fell back, falling on the ground hard. "Someone call the police! This guy just attacked me!" he yelled as the crowd nearby grew larger and larger. I was worried. Obviously, it was in self-defense, but I kept thinking that I should have shoved him back and not bopped him. I was worried that if he had fallen so hard that he had been hurt, I could get in trouble. A manager came over and asked what was going on. He started screaming that, "This employee attacked me when I tried to ask for simple directions. Look what he did." By this point, you can see that he's really hurt. "Who did?" the manager said, puzzled and concerned, looking around at the actual employees who were still on their way to the commotion. "Oh my god, are you all this stupid? Him!" he screamed, pointing at me. He doesn't work here, sir," the manager said. The manager got on the radio for more employees, ignoring the man's insistence that I do and tells me to follow him. He takes me to the security office and has me wait for the police. Luckily, multiple customers and the cameras saw my side of the story, and since the police went to the injured person first to render aid, they also interviewed witnesses over there before coming to me. When they came in, I gave my side of the story. The police say it contradicts his version of events and that it matches the witness statements. They said the guy was yelling that he wanted me arrested and locked up. That's when the manager pulled up the footage, which showed him hit my hand and shove me, and I only bopped him after that and one time. Also in my favor, I was facing him with the drill shelf behind me when he shoved me, so I was somewhat cornered. They then asked if I wanted to press charges, and since he wanted to get me arrested, I decided, yeah, lock him up. They arrested him, and a few months later I found out he pled guilty and avoided jail time, but now he has an assault charge on his record. I honestly wouldn't have pressed charges if it wasn't for the fact that he wanted to press charges against me. I hope he learned his lesson and doesn't treat anyone that way again, even if they're a Home Depot employee. Always press charges. It teaches entitled people to keep their hands to themselves. Can't do anything much about their idiotic words, but when they decide to put their hands on you, then lessons need to be learned. Entitled parents brought their loud 3-year-old to see The Batman and were shocked when I asked them to keep their kid quiet. Saw The Batman opening weekend. Loved it so much that when my parents told me they were going to see it last night, that I drove up to their place to go with them. After talking it up, I was genuinely excited to see what my dad, who loves Batman, and my mom, who loves Jeffrey Wright, would say about the film. It all went swimmingly until we took our seats. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a family of 3 in the row ahead of us, maybe 4 or so seats removed from being directly in front of us. I noticed one of the members of the family was a toddler. The first 30 minutes of the movie are fine. He makes a couple small noises, but that's it. Nothing too loud or intrusive. But I forget the exact scene. Something loud and bright happened, and the poor kid got a little burst of energy from being spooked or overstimulated. Who knows? I should mention that this theater was an IMAX screening, so the noise and bass were booming, and the screen was huge. He starts wanting to stand up and walk around, and the dad grabs him and tries to stop him. Kid starts crying, and then is trying to talk to the dad while the movie is progressing. After maybe 5 minutes, I'm well beyond done and lean over to whisper, "Hey sir, can you please get your kid to be quiet or step out and calm him down?" He gives me an annoyed look and says nothing, and the kid keeps talking, louder than before. I say again, "Seriously, you need to get him to stop." He sighs, annoyed at the prospect of having to parent his kid, and leaves with the mom and kid in tow. Relieved, I go back to watching the movie until the end. My parents loved it, and I had an overall good time. Until we exited the theater. Dad of the year is in the parking lot waiting for me. The mom and kid are gone. He approaches me aggressively and gets up in my face as I'm headed to my car, saying crap like, "Where do you get off telling me what to do with my own kid?" I'm taken aback for a second or two. I genuinely don't know what's funnier, the fact that he doesn't understand why I asked him to quiet his kid, or the fact he waited for 2.5 hours and apparently will need a ride home from his wife once the ordeal is over. I just tell him, "Look man, the kid is obviously too young to be seeing a movie like this, isn't going to remember it, won't appreciate it, and definitely isn't going to be patient enough to be quiet for 3 hours. He then gets angrier and tells me not to dictate to him how to parent. I say, "I wasn't trying to say you're a bad parent. If you can't find a sitter though, don't make plans for a movie night." That goes over even worse, and he says he bought the tickets and wasted his money because of me. I couldn't help it. I laughed pretty much literally in his face. I told him he's an idiot for buying an $18 IMAX movie ticket for a 3-year-old who wouldn't know the difference between an IMAX screen and their home TV, much less care, and he gives me a shove to the shoulder and tells me to shut up. He yells at me that he will spend his money how he wants, to which I say that's all up to him. I just don't think it's smart. He gets another shove in, and I tell him I have my license and I've got my piece on me. He backs off. I was bluffing anyways. And I go to my car and have a big laugh on the way home. What a loser. Our deal is off. If you don't like it, just quit. I used to work at a company that had a weird work culture. Everyone, including CEO, directors, and the owner, worked way too much, and some would proudly say that they could only sleep after drinking because they have so much work they can't tune off. I was working 12 hours a day, plus commute, all without overtime, while being paid less than market average for 8 hours. I was dumb. I loved what I did. The company has a big name in my country, so it helped build my curriculum, and I had the chance at tackling very interesting projects. So I saw it as a stepping stone to better jobs. About 8 months in though, I started to break. I had stopped exercising and gained weight. My mental health was taking a big dive, and I would wake up at 4 a.m. thinking about things I wasn't able to finish, and then I couldn't fall back asleep. So I handed my resignation in. The CEO, who I had a good working relationship with, called me in to ask what was going on. My director was present. I was honest. He asked what they could do to help keep me in the team. I said we desperately needed more people in our department. My director nodded, and I had to start working 1 hour later so I could at least go for a walk every morning. He agreed with both of these things, said that they were already working on the budget to get 2 more people into our department, and he'd ask for RH to post the openings. My director had vacation planned, and during that couple of weeks, I got to work 1 hour later. Got stinky eyes from my coworkers, but oh well, started to feel better. Interviews happened during that time, and by the end of the 2 weeks, we had 2 new members for our team. Then on the 3rd week, my director is back. We are all called into a meeting about 2 big projects that will require every hand on deck. Company was preparing for an IPO, and we had to work on it. Second day of the week, director calls me for a chat and says I can't be getting in late. I said I wasn't. My hours were changed to start later, as the talk with the CEO. She says that I can't start at a different time than everyone else, and that everything was too busy for it anyway. I either accept it or I quit. I was sure she felt she could spare me now that we had 2 new members, or that I wouldn't want to leave because having helped organize an IPO is great for your resume. Not worth it. I quit. She was surprised. Notice in my country is usually a month, unless the employer asks you not to go. They'd still pay, but if you're angry or whatever, you wouldn't have time to steal information or cause damage. I get to work the next day and find out one of the new hires had also quit. Too much work for her. I see my boss calling HR and asking them to cancel the email they had talked about earlier, while throwing glances at me. I'm sure she was going to ask me to not show up anymore, but with one person leaving, it would be harder to handle everything. I keep working as usual. Don't want to damage my professional image. They find someone to replace me that week since they still had resumes from the previous cycle. Second previously hired person quits. Replacement quit. Then second replacement showed up and I wasn't allowed to train him in case the first one quit because of something bad I said. But he broke a record and gave up after the very first day, all before the end of my third week of notice. That week, I had gone through a great interview for another company, yay lunch hour, and I believe they called my company for reference. HR must have told my director since she suddenly started acting friendly to me and would stop my coworkers whenever they made snarky remarks about me leaving. Did I mention that the work environment there sucked? First day of my fourth week, director calls me and says maybe we were both too harsh in our decisions, that she's willing to allow me to get to work 30 minutes later if I cut my lunch hour by 30 minutes, and she is fine ignoring my quitting since it was clearly a decision made by impulse. I said I would consider staying if she matched my offer from the other company plus 10%, went back to the previously agreed starting work 1 hour later, and I would have to have everything in writing before the end of the day since I wouldn't want to mess the other company over. She said I was doing her dirty, in better terms. Something, hurting the company. No loyalty. Think of your future. After everything we've done for you, you're wasting an opportunity. You aren't being professional. Why would you even think of quitting? When she said that last bit, I smiled and said it was her idea after all. That we had a deal I was willing to uphold despite everything bad that working there had. But she said the deal was off and I didn't like it, I should quit. So I did. I complied. I didn't like it, I quit. We had a third replacement for me that week. I trained her. She lasted 2 weeks. The 2 extra people for the department were never brought in as they were trying to cut costs to better prepare for the IPO. 2 months later, the whole team was different, except the director, who was there holding strong. CEO said he was sad to see me leave, but he understood it. HR confirmed to me at my exit interview that he had been talking to owner and directors on how to change the work culture they had been cultivating in order to retain talents better. HR friend later told me that the owner stopped that nonsense. Oh well, I tried. Loyalty to the company cracks me up every time. Loyalty is corporate speak for willingness to be exploited. Everything we've done for you? Like pushing me towards a breakdown? Am I the jerk for saying my wife and I aren't going to apologize to my sister's boyfriend? My sister, Jennifer, 25, has a new boyfriend, Dan, who's also 25. They've been dating almost 3 months, and about a month ago, she brought him around so my wife and me could meet him. We're both 29. He seemed okay, and we didn't have any problems then. While they were over, I showed them the train horn I bought to install in my wife's vehicle. I wish I could have one in mine, but I drive a company truck, so no dice. I have fun if I have to drive my wife's vehicle now because of the horn. Dan said we should reconsider because the horn would be illegal here. Since he's first year in law school, me and my wife thought it was a flex. But we ignored it because he seemed okay otherwise. We didn't know Dan has been a paralegal for over 3 years and works at a law firm that primarily handles traffic and driving cases. We thought he was just showing off, honestly, because he's in law school now. My wife was stopped by the cops and got a citation for the train horn, and they towed her vehicle because without a legal horn, it was considered unsafe. My wife has to go to court for the illegal horn, and we had to pay a lot of money for the towing and impound fees, plus a mechanic to fix the horn back to a default because I tried and couldn't do it. When Jennifer found out, she said it was our own fault because Dan told us the horn was illegal. I countered to the two of them that he should have been clearer about his credentials at the traffic firm, and we would have listened. But we thought he was flexing and talking smack because he's in law school now. I blame him for not being clearer. We wouldn't have had this problem if he had actually told us. Jennifer says we need to apologize to Dan for blaming him. I disagree. For the record, my parents agree. I've been married to my wife for almost 11 years, whereas Jennifer hasn't even known Dan for 3 months. We don't know him well. My wife is family. I certainly don't think she should apologize, nor should I, because Dan could have communicated better here, and now we're in a mess. If we had known Dan was an actual professional, we would have taken it seriously. You're the jerk. This is hilarious. He told you. You didn't listen. We thought he was just bragging, so we didn't listen. This is all his fault for not making sure, on the first time we met him, that he understood all his experience and knowledge on the topic. Does OP even listen to themselves? You're the jerk. What? You don't bring your resume to every dinner you go to? I've got a QR code on my business card in case I need to back up my credentials. Side note though, why does he have this? What possible purpose does it serve? What jerk altered the vehicle to have an illegal horn? Who does modifications to their vehicle without checking whether it's legal? Could you imagine if they found out from being in an accident or were automatically at fault for driving an unsafe vehicle? You're the jerk, OP. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or Dan? Please let us know.
This dude I went to high school with had a train horn in his truck. Could never stand the guy.
Buy what I can afford? Okay. Last month, I was shopping around for a washing machine. For context, I'm in Nairobi, Kenya. Yes, it's a place. Yes, it's in Africa. Yes, we have electricity and running water. And I'm a bit of a late bloomer, so I look more like a 23-year-old, but I'm 32. Also, I'm a photographer and I dress for comfort, so I more often than not look homeless. Back to the story. I looked up what I wanted online and saw it was available at one of the major chains. But since I was free, I decided to go to the store in person. I went straight to the section with laundry equipment and one of the salesmen came to me. I was busy checking out the model I wanted, opening the door, reading the spec sheet and whatnot, so after he greeted me, we started talking about it. He asked if I'm interested in buying it, and I told him I'm considering it and asked for the price. It was just shy of $900. I knew from their website, but since I was in the store, I asked if they had an in-store discount or discounts for return customers and inquired about their payment plans. I had bought a cooker there a few months before, so I knew all these things existed, and while I could afford to buy the washer outright, it would have left me a little cash-strapped, and I wanted to spread the payment over 2 or 3 weeks. Also, I'm frugal, so I always look for discounts. At around this time, a well-dressed couple came into the same section, probably looking to buy something as well, and as soon as the salesman saw them, he walked to them and left me hanging. I called to him like, "Hey, I wasn't done." And he said, "I'm serving a client now. I'll come back to you in a bit. In the meantime, look around for something you can afford." I was furious, but I'm a bit of a coward, so I walked away and went to the customer service station and started making my inquiry all over again. The attendant offered to call a sales agent for me. Same guy. Apparently, he's the go-to guy for washing machines, but I declined. I told her I already knew what I wanted and I just needed someone to help me with the paperwork and payment and I'll be on my way. She did just that. I paid the full amount out of spite as we were finishing up. The salesman came up to her claiming I was his client, which I denied, and the attendant listed herself as the sales agent. It turned out they earn a 10% commission from each sale, and the guy just missed out on a decent bonus. Salesmen earn around $300 plus commissions monthly. As I left, I turned to him and said, "Turns out I could afford it," with the biggest grin I could muster. Felt good. Best part? The couple he ditched me for left without buying anything. Am I the jerk for telling my sister's new boyfriend she has kids? So my older sister has 3 kids, twin 2-year-olds and an 8-month-old. She's very irresponsible, so my mom takes care of her babies most of the time. Me and my sister are not that close, but she's always messing with my clothes and makeup, and it's really annoying since I'm 17 and I work a job to pay for all my things while she's unemployed and borrows money from my mom and sometimes me. My sister dates a lot, and I honestly don't care. That's her business. I don't ask her about her dating life, and she doesn't ask about mine. I came home last night to my room torn apart, and a lot of my makeup and extensions I just got were gone. I was so mad. I called her a bunch of times, and finally someone answered. It was some guy, and I told him to give the phone to my sister. He said she's busy and can't talk, and what do I want? I said that I need to talk to her, and he said he can relay a message. I said to tell her she needs to bring me back my things, the same way she took them, and that I'm not babysitting her kids next weekend like she begged me to. He was like, "Wait, what?" But I hung up. Like 30 minutes later, my mom comes into my room saying my sister called her, crying hysterically that she was kicked out of some guy's car on the road and needed a ride home, and she was blaming me, saying I exposed her. I was so confused till she came home trying to come after me, and I locked my room door. She was screaming that I told her, now ex, she has kids, which isn't my business to tell, which got him mad, and that what I did was dangerous because you shouldn't mention your personal life to strangers, and that she decides to tell people on her own time. My mom is on her side, saying that there was no need to mention the kids if my sister didn't feel comfortable, but my dad says she's wrong and overreacting. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. You called her phone. You asked for her. You left a message. It's not like you sought out her boyfriend so you could rat her out about her having kids. And of course, if she respected your belongings, you wouldn't have been calling and you wouldn't have mentioned the babysitting. So she could have avoided this situation by 1. Not taking your things. 2. Answering her own phone. 3. Coming to the phone when asked for. 4. Telling her boyfriend the truth. Sure, you don't tell strangers about your family, but you can't go from stranger to ex-boyfriend in the space of one phone call. Not the jerk. How are you supposed to know that she didn't tell him she had kids? And your sister needs to grow up and start taking responsibility for her kids. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her sister? Please let us know. Karen demands I pay her college tuition. I, 44, male, am divorced and have been for over 10 years now. My ex-wife and I have 2 kids, one son, Ben, who's 19, and one daughter, Lauren, who's 17. My ex-wife and I split custody 50-50, and I paid child support on time every month, as well as ensured our kids had everything that they needed for sports and other activities. At a young age, I started a college fund/early life starter fund for the kids, which they were aware of and has grown to a large amount through the years. Over the years, I have always had my kids on my time and tried to be present in their lives. Ben has always been happy to come to my home, have family time, tell me about his life, have a father and son role pretty much. Lauren, on the other hand, is the total opposite. She pulled away at a young age, and when she was old enough to decide for herself, she cut me out pretty much 100%. I spent years reaching out to her and trying to build some type of bridge with her, but nothing ever worked. She went to a few different therapists, and I can only hope that it helped in some other aspects of her life, but it certainly didn't help in a family role. Over the past few years, my son has become angry with his sister and calls her ridiculous. I've told him to not mind that, and it's not her fault, but him leaving for college changed me on the whole thing. When he left, it felt like I lost my only kid, and I gave up trying to have a relationship with Lauren. She never reached back out, and neither did I. It felt terrible at first, but it's much easier to deal with mentally for me. A few weeks ago, Lauren and her mother reached out to talk about her college tuition and where she had decided to go. They asked me if I wanted to go walk the school with them again, and I declined. I told them that I felt I was only being invited because my checkbook was needed. I informed my ex and Lauren that I would not be paying for college or any other of her expenses after her 18th birthday, June, and that I was going to use the money elsewhere. My ex blew up at me. My daughter didn't say anything, and when they told my son, he called me to tell me that he thought I was right and Lauren was to blame. I wasn't a fan that they told him to begin with, however. Now there's a rift between the 3 of them. Should I just let this whole thing go and pay for her education? Would I be the jerk if I stuck to my decision? Update. I want to thank everyone for their time and comments. A lot of you have assured me this is the correct course, while others have disagreed and have been pretty rude. This is the best course, and I'll simply retire early and help my son with his first home. I don't expect to have a relationship with my daughter ever again, and that's something I need to make peace with. I won't serve as her ATM when she's in need though, and with child support ending in July, it will no longer be my concern. Therapy hadn't helped her much in the last several years, so I doubt she'll miss that much anyway. Karen boss refuses my request for time off, so I quit. A few years ago, my husband was laid off at the start of summer. I had a part-time gig as a teacher, but it didn't come with benefits. I had to take a job, any job, to provide health insurance, America, while hubby looked for a new job. I got a job as a teller at a bank. I tried, but was new to keeping a till, so a few times a week, my register would imbalance. Never very much money, under a few dollars, but the whole staff had to stay late until we straightened it out. I felt horrible for the rest of the staff. As if that shame wasn't bad enough, my supervisor, Mel, would remind me that I worked at will and they could fire me at any time. Our family's health insurance going up in smoke was terrifying to me. Sometimes it was hard to hold back tears. I got better as the summer went on, but every few weeks, if I would make a mistake, Mel would smile as she warned me that, "You can be fired for no cause, and you'd have to leave immediately." It was so fantastically over the top. At one point, I pointed out that constant threats didn't create a healthy environment. Her smile only broadened. "It goes both ways. You can quit at any time, you know." When the school year started in the fall, I needed to take my daughter to tour her new school for her first day. I asked to take my lunch in the afternoon so I could help my daughter. Though they approved it, when it came time for my lunch, they insisted I work through my lunch because they were being slammed. By then, hubby had found another job with insurance, and even better, I'd been offered more hours teaching, though still not full-time. It was enough. The next day, I practically floated into the bank. I waited until 10 a.m., then told Mel I needed to talk with her. She replied that she was very busy and it would have to wait until after we closed. "Oh, I won't be here then," I said. She looked shocked.
What?
I smiled. "Remember that I needed to bring my daughter to her new school yesterday? You wouldn't let me do that, so I'm doing it this afternoon." She didn't get it at all.
You can't just take an hour off when you…
I had to interrupt. "I'm not taking an hour off. I'm leaving, for good, at noon. You kept reminding me that I work at will. Thanks for those reminders. I'm leaving for good in 2 hours." While Mel fumed, I waited on customers. I practically sang my greetings to them and was so cheerful, customers kept asking me why I was so happy. I was delighted to tell them, because I'm leaving forever at noon. After a half hour of that, Mel thought I should just go right away, and I did. I skipped right out that door, then gave Mel a very elaborate curtsy at the door. Husband left me locked out for 45 minutes while he played Elden Ring. My husband and I currently live in an apartment that requires a key fob to get into the building, then a regular key for the apartment. Over the weekend, my fob stopped working, and for some reason, the office is dragging their feet replacing it. Office is closed weekends, so I called Monday to ask for a replacement. My husband's fob is fine, so we're using that in the meantime. I get off work 2 hours after he does, so he keeps the fob, and we agreed that he'll make sure he's at the apartment when I get home so he can let me into the building. I call him when I'm leaving work to give him a heads up that I'll be at the apartment in 15 minutes. I leave work at the same time every day and have for the last 4 years, 5 p.m. Today I left work, called my husband, no answer. I send him a text message, "Hey, I'm on my way home." I call him 2 more times on my drive home, no answer. I arrive at the apartment and his truck is in the lot, so I know he's home. I stand in the entrance lobby and call him over and over, no answer. But I ended up locked out for 45 minutes before another tenant was leaving and let me into the building. I get up to the apartment and my husband is playing Elden Ring on our PlayStation with his headphones on. Apparently he bought it today. I walk over, tap him on his shoulder, visibly upset. He gets that, "Oh no, I messed up" look on his face and rips his headphones off. I calmly ask him, "What on earth, dude?" He tells me he lost track of time, totally forgot, etc. His phone was on silent and across the room from him, thus why he didn't answer the calls. I was upset and I wanted to avoid raising my voice or causing a blowout, so I just tell him, "That was a jerk move. Take the fob off his keychain and leave it to go visit my sister, which is where I am currently." My husband is texting me, essentially saying I'm the jerk for taking the fob, which means he can't leave the building without getting locked out. I pointed out to him that he left me locked out for 45 minutes and that he's at home with his game and that as far as I know, he had no plans to leave the apartment from what he had told me. My sister finds this all hilarious, but does think maybe I was a little too harsh taking the fob when I left. Personally, I feel I was not the jerk as I have no issue with him gaming. I game myself. I have issue that he left me locked out and standing in the lobby for 45 minutes because he wasn't paying attention. Am I the jerk? Info: I didn't take the fob to punish him. I took the fob as he was still gaming when I left for my sister's, so I took it in the event he became distracted and left me locked out again, or in case I stayed late hanging out with my sister and he fell asleep. Info 2: was advised to add this. My sister is 5 minutes down the road from where we live. I took off the fob in front of him, told him when I'd be home, and texted him when I got to my sister's. I'm not an hour away. In the event of an emergency, I can be home ASAP. Keep the fob. Your husband can find an imbued sword key to let himself in and out. Not the jerk. My husband, when I showed him this comment, "I lost 17,000 runes to one of those earlier." Not sure he took the right lesson. Not the jerk. You are also leaving, so why wouldn't you have taken the key fob? Seriously, I don't understand why people are saying she's punishing him. He clearly has no intentions of leaving the apartment. Why would she not bring it with her? Not the jerk. I would be livid. It was a genuine mistake, So as long as you're not planning on being away with the fob overnight or anything, you're fine. But taking it to go for a visit to ensure you can get back in later when he's just on the couch gaming is perfectly reasonable. OP. Yeah, I definitely don't believe it was intentional, but still, it was really frustrating. I didn't want to get angry and get into a fight, so I wanted to remove myself from the situation. I plan on being home by 9 or 9:30, so by the time I left, he'd be unable to leave the building without locking for maybe 4.5 hours. And he told me an hour before I left work, so 4 p.m., that he didn't have plans and would be staying in tonight. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know.
Elden Ring all day, bruh. No, but seriously, is that game as fun as it looks?
Airline I worked for lost thousands because they refused to pay me $10. So the year before lockdown hit the US, I started working for one of the major airlines at my local airport as a baggage handler. I absolutely loved this job. I just enjoyed being around planes from the ground level. When I started, there were no full-time positions available, so I was working part-time, 6-hour nights, 5 times a week. The way it usually works is each gate has a lead, the person with extra training to do the load planning and scanning and towing the planes to the runways, as well as guiding them in, and a few baggage handlers. Now, I had only been there a few months, but I was working my tail off and showing that I was a team player. I decided I was going to try and become a lead, even though they usually want you to work a year or so as a handler first. I was confident and ended up passing the training courses with ease. The problem was they had no availability for more leads, so I was put into what was basically an on-call lead kind of thing, where they could upgrade me for the day if they needed more leads. Now, whenever they upgrade you to lead, even if it's only for a single flight, they have to pay you the extra $1.75 per hour leads get for your whole shift. Remember, I worked 6-hour days, so it's $10.50 is the cost to make me a lead for my shift. Now, for a few months, everything was great. I was a part-time baggage handler, but I was working as a lead for my whole shift, every shift, and I was loving every second of it. Something about towing huge planes full of people to the runway was just awesome to me. Enter lockdown. Within months, the airline industry is tanking pretty hard, as nobody wants to travel and get stuck somewhere. Supervisors are being told to cut costs everywhere they can, which makes sense given the circumstances. Cue up the night of my malicious compliance. It's maybe 11 p.m. and I'm on until 1 a.m. Supervisors have sent a large chunk of workers home, and those of us left behind are being sent all over the airport to cover the flights we do still have coming. I get a call from the office that assigns your flights, and I'm told to go grab a box and a walkie, the stuff needed to plug into the planes to talk to the flight deck. They tell me head to the gate the flight's landing in, 5, and to just put in my request for lead. When asked to be a lead, you put it on your company app, and a supervisor approves your pay raise for the day. I get to my gate check, and the load coming off the plane brief the handlers on what's coming down, and we all get to our spots to bring the plane in. I see the plane coming down the lane to my gate, and at the same time, my zone supervisor drives up to my gate and asks me to come over. He then tells me something along the lines of, "Hey man, we can't upgrade you to lead right now. We just can't swing that extra expense right now." I respond with, "Okay, so who's going to bring this plane if nobody else on the gate is lead trained? And supervisors are not allowed to do any of our work because of the union rules." He then tells me he is going to go find another lead to bring it in and to just assist him when he arrives. So I'm like, sure, whatever. Now it's important to note that planes have very tight metrics for how long it can take to bring a flight in, unload, and reload for the next flight. The flight pulls up to the edge of my gate and comes to a stop as there's no lead there guiding them in, so the flight just sits there waiting, and the entire gate crew are also just standing around waiting. 20 minutes go by, and my radio I still have on me starts going off, and the office is upset. They want to know why I'm holding this flight short and not bringing it in, to which obviously I reply with, "What do you mean? Ex-supervisor told me they couldn't afford to pay me for my lead work today, and that he would find someone else." He then asks me if I can please just bring them in, and I said, "Sorry, but if you're not willing to pay me to do the lead work, then I'm only going to do the handler work I'm being paid for." As it turns out, they sent too many leads home this night, and the ones they did have were all busy on flights already. After about 45 minutes, a lead from 2 terminals over finally strolls up, and we're able to unload the plane as usual. But that 45 minutes that the plane sat idle at the gate cost thousands in extra fuel, plus overtime for flight attendants forced into mandatory overtime from the situation, not to mention all the passengers who were upset from the extra weight who were all comped some credits with the airline for the trouble. I also came to find out that supervisors' bonuses were based on flight turn time, and this 45-minute hold probably cost him his bonus and a write-up. So basically, supervisor didn't want to pay me $10.50 for me to be a lead for the day, and instead cost the airline thousands on a heavily delayed plane at the gate and probably his yearly bonus that all could have been avoided by just paying me the extra $1.75 per hour for my 6-hour shift. Am I the jerk for favoring my scapegoat brother over his golden child twin sister? I, 20 male, have 2 younger siblings, Joe and Jill. They're twins, both 18 and graduating high school this year. Jill is my parents' favorite because they've always wanted a daughter, while Joe is their scapegoat because I guess he's the bonus baby they never actually asked for. I'm mostly better off than Joe, as I'm the oldest grandson from both sides of my family, almost all of whom are just as blatant as my parents are about their favoritism. I felt really bad for Joe, so I did what I could to make him feel less alone. Like when Jill got to go shopping with mommy and daddy, I took Joe skating with my friends. When our parents were too busy watching Jill's pageant, I dragged my best bud to sit through Joe's elementary school musical. Small things like that. It all started as pity moves, but soon my friends pretty much liked Joe better than me, while Jill's princess syndrome got to her head. So now I spend more time with Joe because I simply like him better than Jill. Never said it out loud, but I don't make it a secret either that I prefer not to spend time with entitled brats. Anyway, like I said, they're graduating soon. They both already had their choice of college, accommodations, etc. Jill's going to a university in San Francisco, fully funded by our parents, unsurprisingly. Joe's going to the same university as mine in Seattle, but different campus just 20 minutes away. He's got a full ride, which apparently makes him ineligible to get any financial help from his own parents. This is also hardly surprising, so I made some calls to ask around, see if anyone is hiring next fall. I did this while on FaceTime with Joe. I was reassuring him that we'll find him a job that doesn't suck and pays enough, that he's better off without dad's money anyway, because we both know it comes with strings attached. That this way, mom and dad wouldn't be able to stick their noses into his purchases. I got him to feel better about the whole thing and logged off. I guess Jill overheard, because the next day she sent me texts after texts demanding I help her find a job as well, because she doesn't want dad nagging her. When I told her, politely by the way, that I don't know anyone in San Francisco and that she'd get more help from mom and dad, she blew up, saying all these things about me favoring Joe over her, which, yeah, it's true. I love both of my siblings, but I don't particularly like Jill. It's not like she's making herself likable though, so am I the jerk? I figured your brother was a total mess-up or something, but seems like his only crime was being the boy twin. Mess-ups don't get full rides to college. Here's the thing, of course you're not the jerk, but you went above and beyond, because without someone like you in his life, Joe would have likely slipped into total mess-up territory. So what you have done for him is beyond any measure of the acronyms we have on this page. As for Jill, give her a chance to grow up without your parents' constant dotage. She might surprise you. OP. Oh, he's not a mess-up alright. Dude's got a real big brain, and I know he's gonna have the time of his life in his classes. He got the brain, I think I got the looks. Fair's fair. As for Jill, like I said, I love both my siblings, but until she can talk to me without screeching or yelling or demanding something, I'm not gonna like her all that much. Tell your bro that once a scapegoat leaves home, they become an awesome space goat. There's no limit to how high they can climb once they leave their toxic family behind. OP. He's gonna make everyone call me Joe's brother in less than a year. Not sure how to feel about that, but he'd deserve it when that time comes. Kid works too hard. If I have that kind of brain, I'd skip half my class. Now that I write it out, that's probably why I don't have it. Don't want my crew to eat well? Fine. I'll make you pay even more so they can eat like royalty the whole week. I own a small video production company. There's one simple rule to keep morale high on set. Feed your people well. We had a fairly big project coming up. Instead of the usual 3 to 4 crew members, it was going to take 17 crew members. We submitted an itemized budget to our client for them to review. We usually allot $15 for breakfast, $20 for lunch, and $30 for dinner. I know that may seem high, but sometimes these shooting days can consistently run for 10 to 12 hours plus. It's incredibly important to keep people well fed to keep a crew morale high throughout the shoot. Meals are short but planned events in the schedule, not unpaid breaks. And if all you have to look forward to is crappy sandwiches during a long and demanding shift, the collective efficiency begins to fall by day 2. I've worked on many sets like that, including one with no meals, and it sucks. I never want to do that to any of my crew members. Good food is the least you can do. So we send the budget to the client, and chaos breaks loose on a couple of levels. They decide they want something a little more for the set, but they also don't want to have to hire more crews or shoot for more days, as that would balloon the cost. It was still within the scope of what we could do, and it was an exciting project. The problem was that they wanted to help offset the potential cost of the extra art direction by reducing the rate for the crew and the meal costs. I've already offered the crew these positions for the day rates they requested, and I'm not budging on that. I don't want cheap, I want good. And if you want cheap but not good, then they can go somewhere else. Over an 8-day shoot, the total for $65 per person per day was almost $9,000 total. They wanted to reduce it to $4,000. Get out of here. You're talking bare minimum for that many people. I called the client and explained that it was very important to not take away from that part of the budget, but they won't budge. I don't even spend that much for food on vacation. Okay, well, this isn't a vacation, and you're not the one working a physically and mentally demanding 12-hour shift every day for over a week in a different city. Then I have a devious idea. The film industry has lots of jargon that doesn't always make sense at face value. Things like stinger mean an extension cord, and C47 is a clothespin, and a Texas apple box means a specially made wooden box laid down on its largest side. So I comply maliciously by saying, okay, as I've said, it's very important to keep the meal budget as it is, but I think I can get it down to $6,000 or so. They eventually agree to it. Thank you. Then, on a completely unrelated note, of course, I talk about the art direction. Now, unfortunately, it may still cost a little more than before, because with the new style, the art department is going to need the craft services budget increased from $3,000 to $6,500. I know it's not cheap, but they'll be able to make exactly what you're looking for. That kind of style is in very high demand, so those materials are pretty expensive to get. Also, the shipping for the extra craft services supplies are going to cost a few $100s. Also, the extra construction for craft services will cost a few $100. We chat about options, but they accept it. They're paying more, but they still saved money and got what they want. Here's the thing though, craft services has nothing to do with the art department. That's the snacks and drinks available on set throughout the day, and the people who prepare them. The art department did need that budget increased because of the smaller meal budget. Just so happens that all the other departments did too. The style they were asking for was in high demand, but didn't actually cost that much more. Craft services ended up equipped with breakfast sandwiches, donuts, coffee, protein bars, fruit, and many other snacks for breakfast. Various forms of catering from local pizza, Italian, Mexican, and Americana restaurants for lunch that happen to appear at craft services for serving. Desserts, expensive charcuterie boards, deluxe trail mixes, veggie platters, and lots of sparkling waters, bottled Starbucks, lemonades, and about a dozen other kinds of drinks throughout the day in nearly unlimited supply. I can't list everything, but it was much more than we usually supplied, including full meals. I let the crew know the situation and that breakfast and lunch would be served at craft services with appropriate break times. Then I let them know that the limit for dinner each night would now be $50 and would be after we wrapped up each day. Oh yes. Some days, some people were tired and just wanted to go to sleep after the shoot. No problem, your meal budget rolls over indefinitely. By the time the shoot was finished, we had been to many of the nicer restaurants in the area. By the final night, it was a blowout. Almost everyone had a decent budget rolled over due to the occasional fast food dinner. The average bill, with fancy drinks, appetizers, and to-go orders included, was well over $100 per person. My company still profited plenty, and all of those crew members are still happy and even prioritizing working on our projects. Being well-fed and well-paid on a set is the kind of thing that's not forgotten in this industry. It's not a waste, it's an investment. Read the employee manual so you don't look lazy. I was working in a small hospital as a security guard to help pay my way through college. I'm male with long hair, and my boss was a clean-cut, beefy ex-football player and hated that I was far more intelligent, pre-med, and could handle situations far better than he ever expected me to. I helped install a security camera system on every entrance and busy hallways to the hospital. Rather than eating meals by myself in the cafeteria, I would take my meals to the security office and watch the cameras, since I could cover more ground and still eat in peace. I would do paperwork there and watch the cameras as well. He came to me one night hoping to catch me slacking.
You know, you look lazy just sitting here, so please read the employee manual while you're sitting here. You might actually learn something.
So one night, I get bored enough to pull down the employee manual and read it between my rounds. Sure enough, they weren't paying us for on-call time. Not only that, they were paying us wrong for when we got called in during our on-call hours. And anytime we got called, we were supposed to be paid from the time we were paged until we arrived back home at no less than 1 hour per call and rounded up to the half hour. I promptly photocopied the page, highlighted the section, placed a copy in each security guard's messages box and across the hall on the human resources lady's desk. I even printed off the timesheets and corrected it for my proper pay I was owed, $700 or so, from the past 2 years, and left copies in HR and my boss's desk. The next day, during my day off, I received a call from our secretary saying I needed to come in immediately. I walked into the secretary just smiling at me, my supervisor grinning from ear to ear, and my boss was mad. I sat quietly while he berated me about this BS move I had just pulled, to which I replied, "If I recall, you told me to read the employee manual so I don't look lazy, so I did." At this point, he was threatening me and screaming so loudly he could be heard way down the hallway. He was threatening to fire me for insubordination and a list of other infractions. I simply stared at him and said, "I think we should talk to human resources," stood up and walked across the hall with him screaming at me the whole way as he stood up to follow me. I simply knocked on the door. "Hey Rhonda, did you get my memo and corrected timesheet?" She simply smiled and said, "I sure did. I'll cut your check as soon as I can." I replied, "And did you catch Larry threatening to fire me for reading the employee manual like he told me to?" "I sure did, hun, and you don't need to worry about your job. You're safe here, and if you need to file a complaint, we heard everything." I turn around to find Larry fuming and red in the face. He turned around and walked out of the hospital to go cool off. Our secretary, my supervisor, and HR all just stood there and broke out laughing. I looked at our secretary and said, "Could you please log my hour for the time I had to come in for this?" Best $700 check I ever cashed. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard.
Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.